Pro Cannabis Media programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And by Artery Pay, easy, cheap, fun, and legal, just like cannabis should be. Hi, everybody. Welcome again to the live edition of Green Rush, the Business of Cannabis talk show on Pro Cannabis Media. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. I'm joined every week by my co-host and sidekick,
David Rabinovitz, right up here.
There he is. And a special couple of guests are also joining us here on the first part of our show. Old friend Curt Dalton, cannabis.net. Curt, good to see you, man.
Thanks for having me.
And of course, an old friend who's a little busy, I'm guessing, these days. He's appearing just about on every show or all over the place. Is Chris Walsh from MJBiz Daily. Chris, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah, excited to talk.
I would think so. The 10th MJBiz Con is next weekend in Las Vegas. And all I can tell you is, if I'm as busy as you are, I got to tell you, I'm scared to death with what's going to be going on next week because of all the excitement and all the different interviews we have. How excited are you to finally hosting a face-to-face event again?
It's a really surreal experience because last year was so difficult for all of us in so many ways. And when the main part of your business is hosting live events and that goes away, you know, it was a very tough time to navigate our company through it, make sure that we could still provide, you know, value to the industry while we had to deal internally with our own crisis of not being able to hold events. So now to be back here, you know, had no idea it would be 2 years later, unfortunately, since we could gather in Vegas. But, you know, it's just kind of like all the hard work of navigating through 2020. And then even into this year, not knowing what was going to happen with the coronavirus as we've all faced it. And then being like, okay, we're back in a more predictable world. And now we can really celebrate everything that's happened in this industry, all the good stuff, and then really all gear up for what's ahead. Because I think we've got some exciting times in the coming years.
Absolutely. And of course, the first question, let's get it out of the way. You guys are following all the protocols that are in place by the Las Vegas Convention Center Board, as far as masks indoors for your indoor convention. What other precautions are out there and how can you ease everybody? Because I got to tell you, there's been a rush over the last week. A lot of people are saying to me, I'm going now. I'm guessing you're feeling the same thing as far as registrations go.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were waiting to see how this all played out, right, before they forked over any money or committed to anything. And so we are getting we always get a lot of last minute. It's kind of how the cannabis industry works. It's not a surprise, but sometimes people wait till the last minute. That's always plays out every year. We're seeing that again now, especially with COVID and you know, people wanted some more clarity before seeing if they're going to come. So we're really pleased with our attendance so far and our pacing. And we expect a lot more people to register in the coming days. As normally happens, our show floor is full, and we're hearing about it left and right. And you know, we've worked hard. Our whole staff has worked hard to be able to help this industry get back together. Right, we're all dying to get back in the same room and talk business.
And I'm going to interrupt you just for a second, because we've already attended a few face-to-face cannabis shows, courtesy of our friends at New England Cannabis Convention, NECAN. And I got to tell you, the overall feeling of everyone is such a sense of relief and the ability to meet face-to-face or mask to mask, whatever. It's so much different. And it's so important in an industry like cannabis because the plant itself brings a lot of people together, and there'll be quite a celebration, not just at your convention, but in that whole town over the next week, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, since we built this MJBiz Con, you know, it's become a premier event in Las Vegas and on the Strip. So, you know, every time I go there for something else and someone finds out, like a cab driver, Uber driver, someone, you know, at the casino knows what we do. And they're like, oh yeah, I know that conference because it, you know, it takes over a big part of the Strip and there's parties everywhere. And there's a critical mass of people. It's a big conference. But having said that, we have, to your earlier question, you know, you got to be masked up, and that's that's our world right now, especially in Vegas. Those are the rules, right? We don't have any choice in that, but we would do it anyway because we want people to be safe. And, we've spread things out more so that you'll have some more room, so while there's going to be a lot of people and a lot of exhibitors, we hope to avoid the mass crush of people we've had in the past where you're jostling to get through the show floor. So we spread things out way more than we ever have to give people space and all the other precautions, with hand sanitizers and just encouraging people to realize that this is still an issue, right? And let's make everyone feel safe and comfortable. And I'll tell you, I've been traveling the last 2 months to a lot of mainstream events, business events, speaking about the cannabis industry, convenience store owners, to indoor agricultural growers, to the nightclub and bar association, to packaging. And the events are back, right? And you can do this safely. You can do it well. And we've seen it in other industries that, this is back. People are eager to get face to face, but it's times 10 in cannabis, right? This is how we built the industry. So I think that's, especially this year, that's why people are looking forward to it.
How many square feet of exhibits, or how many exhibit halls will there be this year?
We're in the central and north halls. So we're in 2 halls with exhibits. In 19, we were just in central. Now, again, we've spaced things out. So we have a full show floor. We've got over 1,200 exhibitors, where initially we were planning for over 1,000. So the response from the industry has been fantastic. But you got to bring your walking shoes and bring multiple pairs, because it's a village here we're building.
To go through that show in 2019, when I decided I'm going to walk every aisle, literally it took me the whole day. And people can say, how can it take that long? But the aisles, it was such a huge show. It was what, like 27 or 30,000 attendees in 2019?
Yeah, there were over 30,000. Yep.
Yeah, it was so many people and so much at each booth that it really takes a while. It really is a fantastic show.
Thank you. And we're trying to evolve with the times too. And we have this partnership with Hall of Flowers, which people in California, anyone in the cannabis industry likely knows them. But we're looking at ways to meet the evolving needs of the industry. And while most of our show floor is a lot of the vendors to the industry, the lighting companies, the legal companies, the consultants, the soil, nutrients, software, list goes on and on. We do get a lot and a critical mass of people that are running dispensaries, that are running infused products companies. And so all of them are there, and we're trying to connect those 2 groups better than we have in the past, because we've seen that in the past, you could only do business in your city or state, right? It was hard to expand across state lines for both retailers and infused products companies. But now we're getting to a point where these companies have found ways to develop national brands. So they do want to get together more than ever now. And it's not just about, well, I know everyone in Denver, right? I don't have any interest beyond that because that's where my company is. Now you've got these companies in multiple states. So the need to get together is even greater. So we have exciting new things like the Hall of Flowers experience, which is really going to connect those 2 sides.
Curt, I know you just came back from the Benzinga conference, and again, I'll never forget the 3 of us, you, me, and Chris, sitting upstairs in the press room doing our first interview a couple of years ago at MJBiz Con. And it'd be nice to resurrect that again as an annual event. But coming back from Benzinga, is there anything that came up at that conference that you think might want to apply or share with Chris?
Well, everyone's looking forward to your conference, Chris, because that's all we talked about at the end. I'll see you in 7 days, 10 days. I'll see you out there where you go. And I guess my question is, how's the international? Like, what are you seeing from 2018-19 on the international tickets coming in? Is it 50%, 75? We're just curious. I'm sure it's going to be packed, but what's the international?
No, that's a great question. I haven't dove into what the exact numbers or percentage are. I can tell you that we had a couple of exhibitors that were outside of the US and Canada cancel over the last couple of weeks, but not as many as we thought. We still have plenty of exhibitors, for instance, from China and Europe. And so it held up better than we thought, given the COVID situation. On the attendee side, it's definitely, there's going to be less of an international presence than the last couple of years for obvious reasons. People can't get in, they're worried about getting home, et cetera, et cetera. But, it wasn't the drop off that we expected. Even Canada, things have gotten a little better between the US and Canada and travel between the 2 countries. So that is holding up well, in addition to the rest of the world. But, while we're talking, actually, I could look really quickly and see how many people we have like from different countries. I think, normally we have in the 70s, people from 70 different countries attending. And I don't think we're that far off it this year. So, the international markets in general have had a tough go of it during COVID, and they didn't move very fast. And they weren't moving very fast before, right? These markets take a long time. But there is an international and global element to the cannabis industry, and we absolutely have good representation at the show. Not what it was before, though, to your question.
Right. Hey, just so you know, our show is a preview of the MJBiz show, and I think we've got a great lineup. We've got Max Miller from Paybotic coming on, Tony Gallo, managing partner from the Sapphire Risk Advisory Group, Jack Naito, president of Luna Technologies, Maxime, I think it's Curt from the Cannabis Business Advisors out of Arizona, John Hartsell from DIZPOT, and Terry Booth, now of Audacious Brands. That's a pretty good lineup for us, but you too have a really good lineup of speakers. Walk us through what the first day is going to be like. I think you do your welcoming remarks at what time on Wednesday morning? 10?
9.
9. So Dan French, get up. You're going out there at 9 a.m., just so you know. It's Pacific time, though. That is noon.
Yeah.
Noon for us Eastern time.
You should be able to make that.
Yeah, we should be able to make it.
So really quick before I answer that, I did go back and actually we have much fewer international presence or people from other countries. I think we're a little over a dozen. So that the issue with COVID has absolutely affected that part of our industry, and that's also though why this week we've been doing digital portions of MJBiz Con for those who can't attend, and a lot of that was focused on the international conference. Or international content, sorry. So that's where we put that online this year, knowing that a lot of people aren't going to be able to make it. To your question, though, this is, Wednesday, I think is going to be, it's going to be an interesting morning for a lot of people in the industry, including us, right? People have started going back to conferences. Most people haven't yet been to one, but I think it's just going to be time to breathe it in, right? And you're just like, I don't want to mix that with COVID, right? No, don't breathe that in, but I just mean like, let's, it's just going to be a weird experience for everyone to be like, wow, here we are again. There's my buddy over there. There's someone I haven't seen in 2 years. Like, we're back. We've made it through this dark period, right, as people. And so, we're kicking it off where, I'll give a good overview of what we've seen since we last gathered in Vegas in 2019. What has happened in the world, but more importantly, what has happened in the cannabis industry for this conference to cover. So what are some of the, there's so much to celebrate, and there's so much we should be proud of as an industry of what we've done in the last 2 years. And I'm really going to highlight that. We need a feel-good moment for this industry because we've landed on our feet, and the industry held up really well, right? So we're going to celebrate everything that's gone well, recognize the struggles and challenges we've all had, and then we're going to look forward in the speech and see what's coming. What are the issues we need to focus on? It's not all rosy, right? We've got issues playing out in the industry, so we're going to touch on that too.
Is the magic word going to be essential? Because isn't that
it will
really
be mentioned?
What's that?
It will be mentioned in the course of my.
There's a little duck will come down, and it's the magic word because if there is one word that kind of sums up the biggest development is that there was an acceptance during the pandemic that this industry is essential as a medicine in many states, except for, well, I guess Massachusetts, they made it an essential medicine, even though they shut down the adult use, whatever. Let's not talk about our state, shall we? Let's talk about the overall industry and accept the fact that there's almost like a sense of maturing going on now, even though it's an adolescent situation, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of maturing going on, but there's a lot that needs to still happen. And honestly, the people who need to really mature are the federal lawmakers who are just clueless right now, and they're just sticking to 40-year-old perceptions and stigmas. I mean, we all know it, right? It's ridiculous. So who needs to mature the most? It's not in the industry. It's not the weed people. It's the people that have the power to change the laws for the benefit of this whole country that are not doing anything.
Right. And you would think that there would be more acceptance amongst my former comrades in the media. And I saw an ugly story in the New York Post, consider the source, I understand, about a research study. And they highlight the fact that cannabis is involved, and they throw in the fact that, of course, if you use cannabis, you're also using cocaine and heroin and methadone and every single drug that's out there. You loop them all together, you're more at risk for COVID now, even though you got a shot. I'm like, well, maybe you shouldn't put all those different substances in your body. But again, do you feel a softening of the stigma at all in mainstream media?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that, actually, I think the recent stories like that are exceptionally rare over the last decade. It started with the mainstream media not taking the industry seriously. And it was just, they weren't against it or they didn't come out against it. It was just like, this isn't real. Like, this doesn't deserve our attention unless we can make a bunch of pot puns in the headline and in the beginning of the story, right? And it shocked me how long it took the mainstream media to realize this was a real legit industry. It would be in their backyards and they wouldn't be covering it like a real industry that's generating billions of dollars. It would just, they just wouldn't. So I've seen a change over the years and in the recognition that this industry needs to be covered seriously. And I actually think much of the coverage has been favorable in terms of job creation, the tax situation, and what the industry is doing. So I've been happy with that. And I've been happy that people are actually in the media covering it like any other industry and covering it regularly. I think you get to the science side and you get to the studies side and research that groups do. And that's where they start losing, I think, some of their credibility, not in the sense that they should cover these things, sure. And I'm not here saying that everything about marijuana is great. Like, right, we all need to embrace what comes out and understand that it's not all going to be great, right? And we can't just always say, well, oh my God, why'd you write about this? Or why'd you do this study? Or here's a flaw. But I will, having said that, these need to be legit things that we're talking about. And so what you mentioned was a very strange finding in this research study. And it wasn't covered in a way that I felt was very objective. Sure, if there are problems with this, and honestly, I want to know if consuming cannabis makes me more susceptible to getting COVID. Like, I don't want people to bury that story, but it has to be done in a scientific way before you blare out that there can be any type of connection. So you see a coverage like this it's kind of sensational. I mean, you're talking about the New York Post too, but
I know
that's what they thrive on. It wasn't really grounded, and when you actually read through it, you're like, oh wait, what?
Right. Well, that's the key. That's actually the key to consuming content, is to read through it, not just look at the headline. Right. I mean,
most people don't do it that way anymore, though.
Yeah, I certainly understand that as well. Curt, as somebody who posts on a regular basis, I think you're familiar with what I'm talking about. To me, it's about the balance of the story. If you're going to write a story like that, there's another side to every story. Where is the balance? And I have yet to see that headline, "Cannabis has saved my life." And how many times in this panel right here, we've all heard those stories hundreds of times. But have we ever seen a headline like that? No.
Coming from cannabis.net, I'm pretty sure people are going to know which side of the fence I fall on for the support. So I got to be a little careful on how I do my phrasing. Like, oh, you might be a little biased over there. But no, I agree with Chris. I think you're seeing a lot more mainstream media, obviously tax dollars, people getting jobs, accepting it now is where, geez, I don't know, like really 8 years in past California and just Colorado. So yeah, Chris is right that now all of a sudden it's not a joke, right? The puns, the pot, this, that, and people are accepting it, trying it, using it during COVID, changing their opinions. And I think the click rates have to adjust, because if your user is now a fan of cannabis in one way or another for a family member, and you see the ad-libbed pot headline that is a little derogatory, they're not clicking on it. They don't think that's as cool. And you're seeing, I think, the headlines adjust, like Chris maybe, inferred.
So Chris, who's that? Give me the lineup of your keynote speaker, because I know he has a media background, doesn't he?
Oh, our keynote.
Yeah.
Our keynote is Damon John from Shark Tank.
Oh, okay.
You may have seen him on Shark Tank, and he's actually speaking on Friday. We've moved the kind of outside main keynote to Friday because we want people to find value throughout the show and not feel like, oh, the last day is it's just winding down, right? So we're trying something different. We're excited for him, but he started FUBU. He's a big investor, and so we're really hoping he's going to he's going to bring some parallels that will resonate with people in the cannabis industry. He doesn't know all about the cannabis industry, right? But what he's going to teach you are really good business lessons that apply to cannabis too, and talk about some of the issues that are important in an industry like cannabis that he has insight on. So yeah, really looking forward to him. And just some background, we tried to get him a couple of years ago, and he wouldn't agree to it. And when we're talking about how the mainstream and the general population, whether it's the media or people in general, what they think of this industry, this is another sign, right? We were able to get speakers. John Mackey from Whole Foods, founded Whole Foods, also wasn't able to speak in the past, and he spoke at our virtual event in December. Two big names that are now like okay attaching their names and speaking to to a cannabis event and speaking to a cannabis crowd.
And I think that's reflective on the fact that you've got companies like Amazon being a little bit more friendly to cannabis and actually helping the cause, among other major companies that are out there that are accepting the fact that this industry isn't going anywhere, and it's going to continue to grow and continue to get bigger and bigger and continue to do great things with the tax dollars, especially on the local, town and state levels. When you start getting hundreds of millions of dollars being infused in the educational systems, I saw this story in Arizona recently that they're putting over $100 million into the education system based on the taxes generated from the sales of cannabis in that state. Of all the states that have legalized over the last few years, did Arizona get it right by just clicking their fingers and saying everybody who's a medical dispensary, you now can do it adult use? Should that be the model that other states are following?
You're gonna get pushed back.
I know that.
Think on this, no matter what you think, right? Like with anything, cannabis and regulations, like it depends where you stand. I will say, the good thing that Arizona did was open their rec market almost immediately.
Right.
Like in record time. So
right.
I give them a lot of credit for doing that and not sitting on this for a year or two and figuring it out. Because we know what this is. If you have medical, it's not that difficult. You don't need to spend 2 years trying to come up with regulations. And so I have mixed feelings on giving the existing medical companies the first crack. And I think it is good in some ways, but and it does get a market moving a lot quicker. Mm-hmm. But I think is what you have happen though, is that you don't open up the market to newbies. And by the time they can get in, so you can have the diversity of fresh blood in the industry, give new people opportunities, right, in this industry, you lose that to a large degree. And in Arizona, it's going to be very hard to increase the number of licenses. There aren't going to be a lot of immediate new opportunities on the retail side. And that's disappointing. So, I think that's one of the drawbacks to how they did it and maybe rushed through the process too.
Right. Well, that's fantastic. Any last comments, you guys? Any last questions for Chris? Because we are up against the half hour.
I got one. It's been way too much softball for Chris, so I'm going to ask him a tough one.
Let's do it.
I mentioned you guys as the Wall Street Journal of cannabis, a great acquisition target. You have Breed Market Report off the board. You have Pot Guides off the board to Fire and Flower. The cannabis websites and traffic touching the consumers being more valuable than touching the plant.
I know where he's going.
When do you sell and go buy an island, Chris? What are you looking for?
Oh God, like anyone in cannabis, right? There's a lot of hype and buzz around the industry. So we've always taken a strategy. We're always approached, right? We have been for many, many years. I think we've built a solid business. Really, it's about making sure you're doing things for the long term. You can't predict anything in this industry in any respect, right? We couldn't even plan past 6 months in business strategy, 2 years ago, because this industry changes so much. So, we've got our eye on the ball, and our big focus right now is making sure MJBiz Con is successful and that we have a roadmap and a plan for next year to change with the industry and serve it better. And that's where, the majority of our focus has been. So, never know what happens down the road. There's lots of M&A all over the place, but we're still building this for the long term.
Good job.
There you go. Well, Chris Walsh, first of all, congratulations on surviving and getting to the starting line and the comeback. You know what they say, right? It's the journey when you get knocked off your feet, right? It's that coming up off the bat you've come off the mat. So I look forward to your opening remarks bright and early Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon Eastern. And Chris, we look forward to seeing you in 3D and in person again for the first time in a couple of years. So as always, thank you. You've always been there for us in this show. I appreciate it.
Well, you're doing a fantastic job with this show and all the growth you're seeing. Curt, it was great to see you too. Thank you guys for having me on. Hope to see you in a couple days.
That's right. A few days out in Vegas.
Yep.
And it is a little past 4:20. It's time to fire up. Listen to Jonathan Edwards sing Shanti, and we'll be back with our lineup and a preview of the rest of MJBiz Con on Green Rush Live after our friend Jonathan Edwards. Don't go away.
Yeah, this is a tune that I wrote back in 19... I've forgotten. We had a saying in our old band, one of my first bands in 1966 or so. What are you going to do tonight? Oh, just, like every other night, just going to lay around the shanty and put a good buzz on. Gonna sit down in the kitchen, fix me something good to eat. Make my head a little high, make the whole day complete. Gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. Pass it to me, baby, pass it to me slow. We'll take time out to smile a little before you let her go. We're gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. You're on something. Go ahead. Rick Brodsky, everybody. Nothing to do and there's always room for more. Fill it, light it, shut up and close that door, baby. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Take it, okay. Prohibition never works, it's time to realize it. It grows in my backyard, it's time to legalize it. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. I'm going to sit down in my rented car. I'm going to jam it into drive. I'm going to head on out and play at WSCA with Sean. I'm glad I'm alive. We're going to lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Every night and day, we're going to lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on.
Nice. It's Friday. Thank God. Difference is building a solution for that individual, not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the costs low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
All right, welcome back to the live edition of Green Rush Live, our regular Friday afternoon cannabis business talk show on Pro Cannabis Media. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. I'm joined every week by
David Rabinovitz.
And this week, we're so happy to have old friend
Curt Dalton, cannabis.net.
There he is. And now we're going to introduce our three panelists for this half hour as we move into our continuing preview of the MJBiz Con conference coming up in the next week down in Las Vegas. We've already talked with Chris Walsh. He's all excited to see everybody's smiling faces next week. We want to welcome in Max Miller from Paybotic, Tony Gallo from the Sapphire Risk Advisory Group, and Jack Naito from Luna Technologies. Jack, we're going to start with you, if that's okay, because you were the first one in the room. Okay.
Great.
So you have, you get to go home with the centerpiece and stuff like that. Tell us about Luna Technologies. What is it you do? Where are you from? Where are you calling in from? And tell us a little about your company.
Okay, that's a lot of questions.
That's what I'm here for.
Let's see. I'm from Portland, Oregon. Luna Technologies is from Portland, but I'm calling in today from Joshua Tree, California.
All right.
Taking a little vacation before the big show.
Now, what's a vacation? Okay, trust me.
Right.
I just want to say, and Tony's laughing at that because he understands. Tell us about Luna Technologies. Go ahead.
Yeah, at Luna, we engineer fully automated end-to-end extraction equipment. Our equipment is really focused on the higher end of the consumer market. So products like live resin, sauce and diamonds, and live resin vape, of course. Our equipment can make anything that you can see at the dispensary, distillate, shatter, wax, but we're really focused on that higher end of the market.
Well, we all know that those particular products get you extremely high. Okay, I can certainly tell you that. Tony Gallo, your legend precedes you, sir. Tell us about Sapphire Risk Advisory Group and what you're up to.
Sure. So Sapphire Risk Advisory Group is based in Dallas, Texas. We are the oldest national security consulting company in the cannabis industry. Oldest. We've been doing this since 2013. In that time, we've worked with over 500 clients in 34 states in the cannabis industry, helping them get their licenses, designing their security systems. We built out 72 facilities for most of the major MSOs. We're a security consultant for the Cookies organization. And I am in beautiful New Jersey, having just gone to a conference here, and that is my hometown, home state. So I can't complain, and I'm looking forward to going to my, I think, 5th MJBiz event.
That's great. We'll get into more of that. Now, were you at the Real Cannabis Entrepreneur Show?
I was this morning.
Great. I interviewed Gary George this week live on our LinkedIn show on Wednesday, and he was all excited, and you were there. So a good turnout. Everybody excited in New Jersey about the new market.
Yes, I did actually 2 events. I did one yesterday and then the one today. And the thing I like about the New Jersey market, I call these people are not tire kickers, as I would put it. Having been involved with a lot of people in the industry, they are really vested into getting into this cannabis industry and excited about New Jersey. And about an hour ago, they just released 14 more grow licenses. So we're excited about that.
That's great.
I was going to ask you, Tony, how many of your any of your clients?
I think we have 2 of those 14 that were released. And then in this round coming up, we already have 35 in New Jersey applying for licenses.
Wow, that's great.
Speaking of New Jersey, our next guest that we'll introduce is Max Miller from Paybotic, who we met in New Jersey at the NECAN show. He actually was a neighbor of Accounting Buds, back-to-back booths, if you will, and got to hang out with Max a little bit. Tell us a little bit about Paybotic. Go ahead, Max.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Also, I'm another Jersey guy in the room. My hometown is Jersey. I grew up in North Jersey. And I'm very excited about all the activity that's getting started in New Jersey and have plans there myself. But a little bit about Paybotic. We are a payment processing business that enables cannabis businesses to transact. Retail, B2B, e-commerce. We support cannabis businesses of all kinds. And it's our mission to enable these businesses to transact and provide them financial services like any other business should have. And we also, commend them for taking this risk of just being in the cannabis industry, because it's a big leap of faith to go into this business, regardless of where you came from. So we want these business owners to have financial services like any other business that they've been in before or are planning to start.
Curt, I'm going to let you lead off the first round of questions of our guests in the room. Go ahead.
I guess I'll start with Max. You just went, obviously, with the restrictions on credit cards and some of the workarounds. What makes your company, if people are watching and want to meet up with you in Vegas, how are you doing processing or transactions for cannabis? And tell us a little bit about what a dispensary or a cannabis business would want to come see you at MJBiz for.
Absolutely. We can support retail and delivery outfits with transaction processing. Our product allows businesses to use a card like at any other business with a PIN at the register or at the delivery point. The legality of card processing and payments and banking in this industry, unfortunately, nothing really has changed since we've started in business, and that's just about 9 years ago. Under federal law, the purchase of cannabis, cash, credit, debit, sticks, or stones, it doesn't make a difference. Under federal law, it's illegal. That's why, so federally, this really is an illegal business. The nature of our transaction and how we process, we believe, fits the political climate and the environment that we operate in today. Because if this didn't work, we wouldn't be able to build a scalable business over the last 8 years and service 1,400 merchants nationwide. So to answer the question, there's no getting around the law. It's how do we help these operators operate in the climate today with the financial services that are available. And one of them is our payment processing that we do on our terminals. And there are many other financial products that these businesses need, like cash advance products, invoice factoring, purchase order financing, and those are other businesses that we are providing services to. But our core is at payments for retail dispensaries. So in short, there's no way to get around it, but the laws are what they are. We want to be in a position to enable dispensaries with the laws that are in place today, and we've been doing so successfully for 8 years. So I'm sorry for being a little bit all over the place, but no. There's no one straight answer to that question.
Yeah,
and that wasn't it.
That's all right. Well, it's funny. We got two guys that have New Jersey roots and a West Coast guy, and the New Jersey, New York market. And David, you and I have had this discussion as well. We all recognize that in a few years, that market of New Jersey, New York could equate to what's going on in California. The predictions are there. The population is there. The fervor is there. Jack, from your perspective, how does somebody from the West Coast with an established business get into that East Coast world and make sure that you get fair market share with your products?
Well, I think in the cannabis industry, a lot of business is still done at trade shows. Lots of new businesses, lots of new entrepreneurs get into this industry and they just don't know where to go for information. So they go to trade shows. And I think we're in a good position right now because we're from the West Coast. I mean, this is where a lot of the innovation happens in cannabis and has historically. And so we just have a lot to offer out there.
Right. And Tony, how do you view the New Jersey, New York market and the upside to that? Right now, obviously, it's in its nascent form, but 2 years, 4 years, where do you see that going?
I definitely see New Jersey being one of the leaders there. I think New York is going to be playing catch up. I think they had the head start, but I think New Jersey is going to overtake that. And I think the East Coast will start with New Jersey. Massachusetts is already booming along. Pennsylvania. I think California will always be the big dog and maintaining. But when you're looking at the industry and the growth of the industry, I think looking east of the Mississippi is the way to go right now.
Interesting. Do you guys echo that, Max and Jack?
I absolutely echo that, because you could try and skin this a bunch of ways, but it's really simple when you look at what's going to happen and try and figure out 3 years down the road. There's only one word that I can think of, and that's bigger. The industry is going to be bigger. And if we do the right things and continue to provide value to our customers, we're going to be bigger too. So it's about, doing good business for good people. And I want to enable these, the new operators to service their customers like we've done for the rest of the states. So I think bigger is the highlight in mind.
I agree.
Hey, so guys, as we all know, and anybody who's experienced it, and David, you were there a couple of years ago too, it can be overwhelming, the MJBiz Con. There's so many people, so many things to do. You're dragging a million different locations. There's an alternative show besides MJBiz Con. MJ Unpacked is going on with a Blues Brothers concert as the headliner, I think, on Thursday night. How do you plan? What's a tip for those that have never been to this show, or maybe have only been to one, on how you plan your time each day so that you actually accomplish what you set out to accomplish at one of these trade shows? And I'm going to go to Tony Gallo on this one. I feel like I'm a game show host. Tony, go ahead. Go ahead. Yours for 100 under. How do you plan your time? Go ahead.
Well, it's interesting. The very first MJ show I did, I spoke at, there was 125 attendees and 15 vendors, and it was in Boston. And fast forward to where we are right now, we're over 1,200 vendors, and it'll be close to over 30,000 people. And we've been planning about a month, because I've done this enough times, where what we do is we print and we look at the list of vendors that we're going to see. I have six of my employees going with me, and we divide up the list. And that is the only way really to see this show. It's like dropping you in a forest. You could spend all day and walk around and accomplish nothing unless you have an actual roadmap. And I have about 3 or 4 vendors that are coming for their first time, and that's exactly the suggestion I gave to them: is you need a road plan for this expo, or you're not going to benefit from it the way you want to.
Jack, what's your plan of action, your game plan? And, are you doing film study now in the off time?
Basically that. Yeah. So of course we're exhibiting at the show, and we're going to release a couple new products at the show. But just in terms of attending, we have a lot of employees that are going this year. I'm going to echo what Tony said. We sit down with them over a couple months ahead of time, give them each a topic to research. So they're all going to be going out. They know exactly what booths they're going to. They know what they're supposed to be learning about. And then we come back after the show and spend probably a full week debriefing what they learned. Because MJBiz Con is the best place to see new technology come out.
You want to give us a hint on what maybe one of those new products you might be sharing?
I would love to. Yeah, we're really excited. We've had one flagship extractor that we've been iterating the design for over 5 years. This year, we are bringing on 2 new products. One is just a scale up of lessons that we've learned over the last 5 years. It's in a similar category to our existing product. And the other brings us into a new area of extraction. Wish I could tell you more, but next week is our official debut. So definitely stop by our booth at C5211.
There you go. That's what we want to know. And what time will you be making that announcement, Jack? You see, that's how you want to play media, you know?
Yeah, we'll be announcing the one extractor on Monday of next week, one extractor Tuesday of next week, and we'll have them both at the show. There you go. Double extractors. Max, what's the plan, the game plan for Paybotic at MJBiz Con?
MJBiz Con, it's really exciting to get to see a lot of the businesses we work with face to face, because many retail dispensary owners attend. And unfortunately, we don't get to meet a lot of our customers face to face. So it's a great time to get to meet them. We learn about some of their additional needs, and it's really a great time to do business. I can't say enough nice things about MJBiz, because I've been going to that show ever since it's been hosted in Las Vegas. It was originally at the Rio Hotel. And I remember it was so small the first year. They had less than 100 exhibitors. And now it's the world's fastest growing trade show that competes with the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas for size and scale. And without the reach of attending these shows regularly, Paybotic would not be where they are today, because they've done the right job of getting the right people in the room for you to talk to. So it's been a tremendous, I can't be more grateful for what they've done. And while we've grown, it's been so interesting to watch them grow to this, not just behemoth of a trade show, but industry news platform.
Absolutely.
I can't say enough nice things about them. For the planning, this year we have about 18 people coming, and we've been meeting for the last 3 months, once a week regularly. So day-to-day is planned out. Everyone has their independent and organization initiatives and agenda. So, from going to these trade shows, I like to think we get better and better at them every year. However, at the end, I feel like, it's like going to Disney or Universal. No matter what you do, how much time you spend there, you don't feel like you did the whole thing. Right. So, it's exciting.
Yeah. And I remember you at the end of a 2-day show, Max. Okay. So I remember how tired we both were at the end of the New Jersey show we were at. Curt, David, you got anything for the chat room? You with us? Anything in the chat room?
I am not monitoring the chat room today, Jimmy.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. I see I know our guy Yogi's in there. Yep. So that's actually a great success story, Max, that you just told, that you've been going to these trade shows now for 10 years. You've got a whole team going with you with a game plan and an attack. How do you, and I'll ask you three this, and Curt, I'm going to ask you first, because I want to get you involved as well. How do you define success at a trade show when you go to one, Curt? What's your goal when you attend a trade show? And David, I'm going to come to you. So prepare your answer now. Curt?
Okay. I think for first timers, there's a good piece of advice I got after year one was to 90% of your value will not be on the trade show floor. It will be meeting after or one-on-one meetings, whether it's the bar or in the lobby, or all the networking that happens not on the trade show floor. I was a rookie back in the day, and I thought, I was going to walk this floor and take notes and do this. It's really about what happens. Like, a lot of people will attend and not go in the exhibit hall. They're like, oh, I never go in the exhibit hall. I'm always out in the hallways and that kind of thing. And I guess if you're looking to get really stuff done, just pick out, the people you want to see, whether it's Max or Jack or Tony. Contact them ahead of time, make an appointment. People are doing that on LinkedIn for me. And at least it's in your calendar. Like, hey, there's 4 people I really want to talk to. All 4, I have something in my calendar and it's in their calendar. And at least I know, no matter what, I hope to get those 4 people one-on-one, and whether you're talking deals or whatever you need, make your list, try to get it in their calendar before the show. Because when you're walking around and it's really hectic and there's 1,000 people going left and right, they'll give you a lot of waves, and absolutely, but book them. Pick the 4 or 5 people you really want to see for business and try to book them before the show.
David, that would have been useful advice for you when you went walking through the entire show, your first visit 2 years ago, right?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I've done trade shows since my 20s, so I'm well familiar with them. But Curt's right. The going to if you're walking into the show, whether you're new or experienced, typically you're going for a reason. You may be looking for a certain product. So if you're going in looking for, you're trying to put together a marijuana business, you'll need security. So you want to make a list of the security firms. Obviously, you want to have Tony on there as well. If you're looking for extraction, you're going to want to see Jack. If you're in retail, you're going to want to see Max because you're going to need payment platforms. But I've found the greatest benefit and the greatest value, aside from some of the educational conference sessions I'll have, are the people you bump into. And sometimes it's by accident. You're standing in line waiting to get into a hall and you're interested in the subject and you bump into somebody else who's interested and you find there's some commonality. You may be able to do some business together. I mean, you think about, Jimmy, the New Jersey show is not a tremendously large show that you and I were at.
Right.
But nonetheless, the most valuable connections were people I bumped into walking through the aisles.
Right. Well, it's good when you have a major market like New York within a couple-hour drive of that. And in this particular case, it's a destination, Las Vegas, for sure. Tony, how do you judge success at a trade show?
You know, we're very focused on that relationship also, as everyone else has mentioned. We've had booths twice at the MJBiz, and we found that, you know, our clients aren't the ones that walk around and just decide, oh, I need a security consultant. It really stems from the relationship building. And, you know, I laugh. I looked at our calendar and I'm doing, you know, double dinners on Wednesday and Thursday. So at 5:30 dinner, 7 o'clock dinner, you know, and that's not going to help very much in my weight control, actually. But,
salad at the first one, Tony. Salad at the first one.
You know, and then after dinner, I think someone wants to go have drinks, or there's one of those after-hour parties and stuff like that. So I think everyone's going to be on Saturday. I think Saturday after MJBiz. Not a lot of work to get it done, but it really is the relationship. Everyone here just hit the nail around the head. You know, I've done enough of these with MJBiz. I was in Atlantic City. I spoke at NECAN, and I locked down 4 clients and 3 of them at the bar, more so than just speaking at the event. So right. I agree fully.
That's great. And Jack, what's going to be a success for your company when you look back after the week is over?
You know, if our team comes back and sleeps for 2 days straight, I think that'll be a good show. I think, you know, everyone, like Tony was saying, is booking breakfast, lunch, and double dinner sometime too. So good booth traffic and then a lot of meetings before and after the show. That's a good show for us.
Yeah. And Max, you know, I forgot to mention this. And David, I don't know if you know this, that Max is a Babson College graduate.
No, I didn't know that.
Yes. That's our hood here in Massachusetts. You know, we talked about Cafe Fresh in the Heights. It's a place, it's a bagel place in Needham that's driving distance to Babson. And David is involved with Babson. He's got his master's from Olin College, which I know is right around the corner from Babson. So, you know, yeah.
My business started when I was a sophomore in college. And Evelyn, who runs the business and is the CEO, was my statistics tutor. And we started this business together. And instead of working on stats, we were working on merchant statements. And how I got involved was by bumping into the right person. My college roommate, his family ended up purchasing dispensaries in Colorado and asked me to do the payment processing. And that's really where this all started 8 or 9 years ago. But success at the trade show, I'm just trying to think what that means. And number one, I hope we give away everything we brought there because I don't want to carry it back. Everyone we brought, talk to enough people.
Right. Gotcha. That makes sense.
Number 2, I'd like to know how many existing customers that we got to engage with at the show and any feedback from them on how we can improve servicing them. And then, of course, you know, there's going to be some new business and that'll be measured after. But I guess success is not rushed. And like you said, being able to, the people you bump into are sometimes the most meaningful, and give everybody the time of day. Talk to everybody at the trade show. That's the only advice I could give, because people in the cannabis space come from everywhere, all walks of life, and you never know until you start talking to somebody. But to follow that up, trust but verify.
Right. Oh, I love that. Due diligence, right, guys? That's so important. And we've all met those people that come to those shows and want to take advantage of our good nature. Do you know your booth number, Max? I'm going to put you on the spot.
I know we have two booths. One is in the North Hall and one is in the Central Hall. I can't recall our booth numbers. My apologies.
No, that's okay. I'll find you. Okay, is that fair enough?
Yeah. Now, why two booths, Max?
What was that?
Why two booths?
We had the opportunity to have one as a larger space for meeting space, and then one for more of a demo.
Cool. Great.
Good.
We actually also have a third booth, which will be for our insurance business, and that's Miller's Insurance Group.
Nice.
Well, I'm going to find you wherever you are. Okay. And I'm going to try and get the interview early in the show, so you're not tired at the end of the show, which is what happened in New Jersey. Fair enough?
Deal.
All right, you got it. Tony, do you have a booth? You're walking the show, right?
We're going to walk. Yeah, we're going to walk the show. Yeah.
So I definitely want to find you at some point. You're on my list. Guys, just so you know, every interview we do at the show, we're going to have on our Green Rush Live next week. That will be all the interviews that we do. There'll be 3 to 5 minute interviews. We're going to string them all together and do everything live. What we call them wraparound lives. We'll introduce them live. It'll run on videotape, and then we'll tag it live. David will be back in Massachusetts, but I'll be there. Jack will come find you. We know the number. You gave your number, didn't you? The booth number?
5211. Yep.
See, he knows his number of his booth. All right. So Jack, Tony, and Max, thank you so much for getting our preview off to a great start. I love the fact that it's 3 different industries, and I think that's the beautiful thing about the cannabis industry, is that now there are so many ancillary industries that are getting involved in this space. And those that are plant touching aren't just alone. They now have plenty of opportunities to have other companies working with them and offer their services to others as well. So we look.
By association.
What's that?
Guilty by association.
Yes.
Guilt by association. You know what? That's what the life was like back in the 60s and 70s with this product. I'll have you know. All right. Since I'm one of the few on this show that remembers the 60s and 70s. David, you do. All right. We're going to take a break. We're going to take a break. We'll come back with another panel coming up. We'll see you guys in Vegas. Thanks again.
Thank you
for joining us.
Thank you much.
Pro Cannabis Media Programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And by Artery Pay, easy, cheap, fun, and legal, just like cannabis should be. Hi, I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. And when I started Pro Cannabis Media 2 years ago, I wanted to make sure the cannabis industry had a professional outlet to share their stories in their own words. Now, since it all started with my podcast In the Weeds 3 years ago, I've done over 250 interviews. I've met some incredible people with a shared passion for this amazing plant. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard the line, cannabis has saved my life, cannabis has changed my life. Well, now it's your turn. We want to give you a chance to tell your own story. It doesn't even need to be related to the medicinal power of this incredible plant. Just to give you a little incentive, we will pick 5 stories to share on our live Green Rush show on Fridays at 4 p.m. Eastern. If we share your story, you automatically get one of our t-shirts with that closing line I use all the time. It's a whole new world of weed. But As the legendary Billy Mays used to say, that's not all. One of those finalists will win one of these really cool full-story cannabis storage units. It's a great way to store your cannabis in their food-grade aluminum containers. It's award-winning, child-proof, smell-proof, and has a solid contemporary design. It's a $220 value, but you can win one if we pick your story and feature it on our show. Yes, we will pick one of those 5 finalists, and they will receive this $220 value absolutely free. Now, we ask you to keep your story to under 90 seconds on video and less than 500 words in text. So come out of the cannabis closet and tell us your story, and you could win with yourstory.com. Just go on to procannabismedia.com and sign up today. You might even join us on one of our shows. Promo code for 10% off at MJBiz Con. That's awesome. We love that. Welcome back to Green Rush Live, our regular Friday afternoon live stream business of cannabis talk show. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media, and I'm so happy to have my regular sidekick along.
David Rabinovitz.
There he is. He'll be back.
Words I get to say in this show.
You can jump in anytime. Okay. You know you can. And also old friend Curt Dalton, cannabis.net, is joining us as well. But we want to welcome in our 2 new guests for this half hour as we continue to preview MJBiz Con, the biggest cannabis convention in the world, next week in Las Vegas. Maxime is the president of the Cannabis Business Advisors. Maxime, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And John Hartsell is the CEO and co-founder of DIZPOT. And we'll figure that one out. John, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having the show. I appreciate being here with you.
Absolutely. And I'm going to find out about where the origination is of that accent in a minute. But Maxime, we're going to come to you. Tell us about the Cannabis Business Advisors. And I think this is Arizona. Am I right?
Yeah, we are based in Arizona, but we work nationally. It's funny because majority of our work tends to be in the East Coast. There's just more of a competitive landscape in the East Coast in terms of securing licenses. But generally speaking, our firm, the name is in itself, Cannabis Business Advisors. So we're a national consulting firm for cannabis businesses, and we specialize primarily in applications and licensing. So basically securing your license through the traditional application form. And then we also do assist with helping clients open up their facilities once they are successful in securing their licenses. And we do help with acquisitions and mergers as well with businesses in the cannabis field.
You've been very busy. And
very busy, yes.
And one question for you. Do you know Dimitri Downing?
Yes, I'm sure John does too. Yes.
Okay, that's great because he's been on this show before, and he is my first guest on our podcast booth row or whatever we're doing out there. I think it's on Wednesday, or I think it's Thursday actually that I'm doing those things. So, and I've never met him other than on a Zoom call. So I am really looking forward to seeing him and talking to him in 3D. And everybody has the same reaction in Arizona when I bring up his name. So, John, what's your reaction when I mentioned Dimitri to you?
My reaction is that he has done something with his networking event in Arizona that no other state that I know about has been able to do, which is coalesce the industry around having a very brief and important conversation monthly about our politics, and then spending quite a lot of time having cocktails and enjoying each other's company and being collegial with each other, which means that we play on the same team when we're on the political playing field, and then we play against each other when we're out in the streets trying to sling marijuana. And and so he's done a really nice job of that. You will have a high quality conversation with him when you see him on Thursday. He probably will not be wearing shoes, and he might be wearing a purse, but all of those things are fine. And
I love the guy.
a wonderful gentleman. You'll enjoy your conversation.
I love characters and personality like that, and I know he's got a unique one. Tell us about DIZPOT, if you don't mind, Mr. CEO and co-founder.
Sure. Well, my business partner and I wanted to find a 6-letter URL, and we were kicking around the idea of dispensary depot. So we pronounce it DIZPO. Their T is silent, like, we're French or something.
Yep.
And so it was dispensary depot, and DIZPO made up its own word, and we don't mind the double entendre of DIZPOT and telling the story regularly about how we came up with our company. And so that's how we come up with the name.
There you go. Do you want to tell us a little bit about dispensary? Do you want to tell me a little bit about DIZPO?
Just say it with a French accent, Jimmy. Just say it.
Thanks, Curt. I appreciate it. Well, I've got first, as you know, I asked Maxime. I wanted to make sure I got her last name right, and it turned out to be phonetic. Okay, so I did the same as. I'm sorry. Tell me about what you're doing. Go ahead.
So we're a branding and packaging company. We've been servicing the industry for just about 5 years now, and much like Maxime, we do quite a lot of our business in many other markets. We do a lot in Arizona, but we're servicing all legal markets in the United States with these goods, primarily branded packaging and really professionalizing the industry for its retail presence and meeting its compliance regulations. New to the industry now is the Department of Weights and Measures. And that has a lot to do with packaging and calling out not only the metric weight of something, but now the standard weight of something. And so we're really highly focused on compliance and logistics, moving goods all over the United States and all over the world for that matter. But we make boxes and bags and jars because you cannot carry marijuana out of the store in your palms.
That is so true. And for those of us that have over the years had it in different places on our body, let's just say, it's always a challenge and actually refreshing now to walk down the street with a brown paper bag or although I will say in the packaging industry, and I always bring this up, and the guys that are on this show know I hate doing this, but I have to do it. I have horrific arthritis in my hands, and handling some of the child-proof containers is quite a challenge for those of us who have a problem opening child-proof containers because we're adults with arthritis. I'm guessing that is a concern that you get a lot from people as far as feedback goes.
Yeah, sure it is. And I suffer from rheumatoid arthritis myself and have similar issues. We have actually been working with a couple of different universities with 3D printing and coming up with new mechanisms for child resistance that make sense. And they're significantly difficult for a 5-year-old to get into, and a 65-year-old can easily get into it. And so that's using more intellect than it is hand strength. And for me, that's where the loss is in our government's ability to really regulate an industry that it doesn't understand.
Right.
Responsibility belongs in the home and with parents and grandparents to make sure that things are out of reach of their children. But if we're going to regulate a child-resistant closure, and I will tell you flat out, child-resistant closures are good for my business. I earn more money and more margin and more profit by creating these things. But to me, the place where child resistance belongs is at exit. And if the exit packaging is child resistant, then the industry has done its job to provide a safe place for keeping your products. And so those exit bags that are also reusable to promote sustainability are adequate, and our industry should be driving towards that as hard as it can. It will reduce our carbon footprint and it will improve child resistance in the home.
Now, Maxime, I'm going to get David and Curt to ask you questions because they're both better business guys than I am. And I know they have some insight on new markets and existing markets, the changes. And I'm going to call on David for the first question. You ready?
That's good. Jimmy?
Go
We're
ahead.
going to let Maxine, we're going to give her 1 moment because I got a question for John. On your, are your exit bags, are they recyclable?
Yeah.
So some Mylar bags are, our bags are recyclable. We also offer a compostable bag that, yes. And so the world needs to catch up with regard to the materials that it's purchasing and purchasing enough materials that are compostable so that they can become more efficient towards the bottom line. Yep. But these are products that are available to recycle Mylar bags. We work with a company called Resonate Recycling. It's an Arizona-based company, and we can certainly share post-show. I don't have it with me. It's not on me. I'm in a hotel in DC, but I could share post-show a way to be in touch with Resonate Recycling and how to have your bags recycled.
Oh, that's great. Because I was in New York last weekend, upstate no, I'm sorry, I was up in Maine, way up in Maine. And we went into a local rec store, bought a few items, and I'm always looking at those dark bags to see if they got recycling stickers on them or indication. Around in Massachusetts, I find very few that way.
Sure.
So, Maxine, you ready?
Yeah.
What's the ideal time for you and a state? Is it when they're talking about legalization, when they first put legalization in effect, but they don't have the licensing queue open? Or when do you see the biggest rush of customers? What causes them to start to reach out to a consultant?
Yeah, so there's, in any market, there's usually 4 phases. There's the legalization, right? So when the law passes or when the rumblings are happening or when the law is close enough to being passed, either through legislation or through ballot. And then you've got the rules and regulations being drafted for that law, the announcement of when the applications for licenses are going to be accepted, and then the application itself, right? So traditionally out of the 4, I would say the biggest rush would be right when legalization happens, because that's when the media catches on and everyone's hearing about it and everybody wants to know more information. But you'll see, our leads will weed out the leads, and some of them just looky-loos and they just want to see what's going on and are kind of interested but not quite serious. And then you'll get the more serious groups will come to fruition around the rulemaking process or in between the law being passed and the rules being developed. Once in a while, or I would say 20% of the time, we'll get the last minute group that says, we have everything, you have 2 weeks for the application to be due. And sometimes we take them just depending on the group and the resources they have. We don't take clients just to take clients. We're very boutique-y and very selective with our clients. If we don't think you have a chance of success, we'll tell you. So you're not wasting your time and hours.
So what do you think is the right first step for somebody looking to get into the business? And let me throw in a quick comment. I'll normally tell folks there's really 3 phases of trying to get in the business. There's contemplation, when you're talking to everybody you know and saying, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, and you're just taking a reality check. Are all your friends, family, and associates going to tell you you're nuts? Or are they going to look at you and say, wow, that's interesting? Then you get into exploration, which I'll normally suggest to people. That's when you need to start looking at the financials and do some modeling to say, is this something I can afford? And is the profitability high enough to justify my effort? And then finally, if all that comes together, then you got to do the planning of putting it all together so you can file your application, get your local approval. Provide some commentary on that. I mean, where do you see is the first step that somebody who's looking at this, once they get past I'm thinking about it, I've talked to my friends, and I think I want to look into it. What should they be doing first?
Education. So like you mentioned, the exploration phase, making sure that you're speaking to the right individuals. I get a lot of, I reached out to X, Y, and Z consultants and never heard back from them. You're the first consultant that actually picked up my call and have provided, accurate information. And so, making sure you're speaking to the right people. And then, that boils down to the question of how do you find the right people to speak to? And sometimes you have to knock on 10 doors before one opens, right? And so making sure you're speaking to the right individual, asking them the right questions. I get a lot of leads that will come in and say, oh, I have a license in Oklahoma and I want to apply in New Jersey. I can start when the application's published, right? But no, every market's so different. Just because you understand one doesn't mean it's applicable to another, especially when we're talking about West Coast versus East Coast or Midwest versus, West. It's just very different. And so making sure you're speaking to the right people. And then the media, I would say 5 out of 10 times, it's misleading, or it's based on their interpretation and it's not necessarily the right information. And so if you have the, bandwidth or the want to read the rules and regulations of the source, in the end of the day, I always say turn towards the actual government itself, right? Because they are the most accurate source. Sometimes they're not as transparent. And so you'll need to find a consultant that has experience in the industry that's applicable to the market that you're looking into to, provide for further insight. So I think that exploratory phase is very important.
How important is it to read the local regs? When I say the local regs, I mean the regulations of the state.
Of the state, not the local municipalities, right?
Right.
It's very important. And if you're dyslexic or reading 100 pages isn't your thing, hire an attorney, hire a consultant that can provide you with the information that that you need to know for that moment in time. It's a lot of information. A lot of my job is to make sure that we're giving enough information to our client when they need, so they're not, overwhelmed, with all the information, right? And so making sure that, you have the right team and making sure that they're relaying the information that you need to know at that time is important. Going through the regs from A to Z, unless you're doing it like it's your job. It just depends on the team you have. If you're doing this by yourself, then absolutely, you need to read it 500 times. And it just depends on the person too, right? I have clients that don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole, and that's why he has 2 attorneys on staff and, a consultant like us who's done this in over 30 different markets. And then you have the type A personality that wants to read it and also want your feedback. So it just depends, but it's important regardless, whether you're reading it yourself or getting the information from, a trusted source.
Well, Curt, I don't want to monopolize here. You want to jump in or?
Yeah, I have a question actually for each of them. First, I'll continue. When you're building this, I'm going to give you a chicken or the egg, because when you're building a consulting firm in an industry that doesn't have a history, do you look for consultants that go from a Deloitte or an Anderson and bring them to cannabis? Or do you look for cannabis people that are experienced and make them consultants?
Are you asking me as a business?
Yeah, as you're building this out and you're in an industry that's so young historically, who's giving advice to who? Is it the Deloitte people coming to cannabis and learning, or is it the cannabis people that are at least been in it a while, help consulting other cannabis people?
I personally
how did you build your
prefer bringing I personally, if I was looking for a consultant, I would want somebody who's been in the industry a long time. So people ask me all the time, what's your background? Are you an attorney? Are you, a lot of times it's just an attorney. Are you an attorney or a lobbyist or whatever the case may be? And I said, no, I started from the ground up. I, graduated with a marketing degree. And so I learned this, I've been in the industry 7 years. That was when the green rush really started taking off. My business partner's been in it, 14 years. So back when Oakland was the only market, really. And so this type of industry experience, you can't learn overnight. And as the industry starts to grow and states start to mimic each other, you can only learn these things from experience. And then having a good teacher to teach our staff is the most important thing, and willing to teach the staff, ego aside and all of that. In my experience with hiring, we like to hire people with no cannabis experience, quite frankly. I'm, a women-owned business. I'm women-owned operated. I'm very big on giving, that opportunity to other young women, like I did myself, like my business partner did for me, to teach them. And I think it's easier, especially if you're, in a market like cannabis where things are so fluid and things are changing all the time, to have somebody with a clean slate that is willing and hungry to learn, to teach them. It's a lot easier to do that as opposed to somebody that are kind of stuck in their ways, have their own method, comes from an industry where they're a super rock star. Now they're entering into a new industry where, it's nascent and they don't have, all of their ropes, together yet. And I think giving opportunities to, younger entrepreneurs is easier to teach that's just from my experience.
Great. No, that makes a lot of sense. I appreciate that honesty and also your answer. I got one for John.
Hey,
Come back to you.
Curt, if you don't mind, I would love to comment.
Go ahead.
I think people coming from in the industry and from out of the industry with their different perspectives into a growing business is really, really important. And, we're approaching 40 employees in our office in Phoenix, which is our main headquarters. And we've been hiring people from inside the industry and from outside of the industry simultaneously. And we found that it's incredibly important to have both perspectives. To Maxime's point, having folks coming from outside of the industry into one that's growing so fast and is evolving so fast, having some history or historical perspective of industries that are moving at a normal pace is really important. But having people from the industry and moving and growing so fast is equally as important, so they can see the importance of both sides. Stability, bureaucracy, red tape, redundancies all have their place in our world to make a positive, productive working place. But in our industry, high speed, nimble, ready to pivot, ready to evolve is extremely important. And you brought up some consulting companies earlier, like Deloitte and others. And for us, we've looked at those companies. Like we're right in the sweet spot for Oracle and NetSuite. We're right in the sweet spot for a large SaaS model platform for software and this kind of thing. And we've decided in our company the best way to address that is to build our own ERP, to bring in independent consultants which can show us the way, but to build something that's built for this industry. Because to Maxime's point earlier, the rules are different. And if you don't know them, you can really get screwed. And if you don't start with the federal government and realize that most of your money is theirs, and that the state regulator is the regulator, and that the local jurisdiction essentially is your property manager, if you don't know those rules and know how to play by them, you're going to get really, really behind really quick. And you're going to lose all the opportunities that you gained by being in this industry. So a lot of it is, we need to take everything from these other industries and the other real business world and political world and use them in our industry. But we're growing so fast and evolving so rapidly that we're going to have to make a lot of this shit up as we go along.
That's a good thing we're streaming, so we didn't get commercial break there for that done. The $1 million question for you. Every time we put up an article on cannabis.net about hemp plastic, hemp recycling, I get it out there and say, why isn't the goal eventually to have every cannabis product in some sort of hemp packaging that's biodegradable? Is that a possibility in the future? Do you agree? And what's the time frame on something like that?
The goal is to get everything we package and all of our clothes and our tennis shoes and the laces that lace them up and the 2x4s that build our houses to be hemp. That's the goal. And certainly all the packaging that we use in the cannabis industry should be a big movement towards that. It is a possibility. It will be reality. The timeline on that is decades. And the reason being, all of the infrastructure that is built and developed and the way that we produce these goods is already existing. And a warehouser plant in North Carolina recently changed from producing paper from mill pulp or wood pulp to using hemp pulp. And that was one warehouser plant out of 2,000 warehouser plants. And so for those to all transition and to be conditioned to understanding the value of hemp and using it along with bamboo and other very renewable resources will take decades of time. But yeah, of course, the goal is to be using hemp in as many things possible. We know that is certainly more environmentally friendly than using any kind of wood fiber, and certainly quite a lot less expensive and water intensive of using any kind of natural fiber like cotton.
Oh, thank you.
I do want to just ask one last question of Maxime. We are up against the half hour. You mentioned you have a women-owned business, correct?
Correct.
One of the statistics that I have seen in this industry did concern me because it's changed quite a bit. And 2 years ago, we were at the Women in Cannabis conference. And even in those 2-year periods, now I'm seeing a decline. Back then, in the beginning, there was about 24% of women that were in cannabis businesses. Now it's gone down. Again, a reflection of the fact that men still control capital entrance into this business?
I mean, I agree with your statistics is accurate. Yeah, I mean, I hate to say that, there isn't such a thing as the good old boys club in this industry anymore, but that still exists, and that's going to exist in, many industries to come. And,
Yep.
We can only continue to, give opportunities to women as a business in itself, and to, support other women in business in this space. I think that there is a rise, and it will, get back there, when everything shakes out. But yes, there was a time where women did dominate the industry, or at least it looked like it, right? But behind the scenes, we all knew who was pulling the strings. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
That's all right. No, I thought it was an important thing to bring up because it was a trend over the last few years, because I remember it being a lot larger. And then I realized, wow, as it's more and more money's coming into the industry, let fewer and fewer women have access to that capital. And, it's more a reflection on our world than anything else. I don't think it's being done from a sexist point of view as much as it's being done from a capitalist point of view, that the access to capital is still being controlled by men. And personally, I don't think that's right, but we can get into that another day. In the meantime, guys, what are your plans for MJBiz as far as what you hope to get out of that conference next week, Maxime?
Honestly, the past 2 or 3 MJBiz Cons, including the international, I was speaking. So I didn't really have enough time to network and meet with people at the conferences, although, it's a 3-day conference. This time I'm not speaking. So I'm making arrangements to meet everybody I need to meet, go to all the cool parties and events. And so that's something that a lot of people don't necessarily think of when this is your first time going. It's, I want to walk the expo floor. First of all, you're going to see 90% of it's going to be lights, just FYI.
Lighting. That's right. Lots of lights.
And so, I would say pick, obviously the speakers you want to watch, but also keep your eye out on a lot of really awesome networking events that are out there, with that are sponsored by, either MSOs or, ancillary businesses. There's a lot of great parties and great networking opportunities through that avenue that's outside of the conference, obviously brought in because of the conference crowd. But yes, I am taking in-person meetings. I'll be there from Wednesday to Friday, and I have some available slots left. So whoever's listening, if you're interested in scheduling a meeting, you can reach us at the cannabis businessadvisors.com, and our email address is on there.
Great. And we have that. And I know Isabel will be in touch, because I definitely want to carve out some time for the two of us to meet and at least have a little chat somewhere. And John, that goes for you too.
Great. I'd be loving to meet with you and get with you. It's a honor to be on the call here with Maxime. We've been around each other for all of those 7 years that you've been in this business, and me too. And I'm just so glad to see your success and everything that you're doing. And if you are listening in and you are looking at licensing opportunities, having been around Maxime and her business for so many years, I know that she would guide you in the right direction and give you the pathway to success in this business.
Thank you so much. Really kind words. Thanks, John. Yes, we've known each other a long time.
That's great. And I'm going to ask Dimitri about both of you when I see him on Thursday.
And, all right, ahead.
Right. And thank you. And we've got a very special guest coming up in the last half hour. It's Terry Booth. And if anybody knows the history of Terry Booth, he was one of the co-founders of Aurora, and he'll be joining us now because he's the head of Audacious brands and Australis capital. And that's coming up in the next half hour. So for Maxime and John, thank you so much. much. We'll see you in Vegas. We'll take another break and come back with the big finish on Green Rush Live for Friday afternoon. Don't go away. Pro Cannabis Media Programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And by Artery Pay, easy, cheap, fun, and legal, just like cannabis should be.
Difference is building a solution for that individual. Not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the cost low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
So I think there's one very important difference between me and most of my team members and other cannabis accounting firms, especially outsourced cannabis accounting firms. With a lot of the other firms, you're going to find bookkeepers or folks that were accountants for their entire career, but they were junior accountants. I've spent most of my career alongside CFOs at public companies with thousands of employees, public companies. So much of my career wasn't spent in the debits and credits. It was spent with the CFO, CEO, COO of large public companies, working on strategy, working on planning and big initiatives, working on projects such as mergers and integrations. So that high level experience, along with being able to do the debits and credits and having members of my team that also have fairly senior experience and also members of the team that are junior and can do the bookkeeping at a little bit lower cost than some of the people with the experience, gives our clients a much broader depth of experience than a lot of the other firms where you're hiring someone that is just a bookkeeper and can't help with the strategy side of it, or someone that's been an executive for a long time and can only help with the strategy but can't help with the hands-on.
Pro Cannabis Media Programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And by Artery Pay, easy, cheap, fun, and legal, just like cannabis should be. All right, welcome back to the final half hour of Green Rush Live, our regular Friday afternoon business of cannabis talk show on Pro Cannabis Media. I'm Jimmy Young, the host of Green Rush Live and the founder of Pro Cannabis Media and PCM TV. And a reminder to please like, share, and subscribe to our content. We're very proud of the success that we've had, and everybody who gets involved with this show seems to, for whatever reason, want to come back on. And we're so lucky to have David Rabinovitz with us every week. Curt Dalton steps in, and now we've got a legend in the industry. Terry Booth is with us. Terry, thank you so much for joining us here on Friday afternoon.
Hey, Jimmy, thanks for having me. I look forward to our chit chat here.
Yeah, and You know, I'm actually gonna let my two business guys kind of dictate the conversation here. First of all, tell us a little bit about your story, because it started. You were the co-founder of Aurora Brands up in Canada first, correct? And now you're running a company called Audacious Brands. So that's a little bit of a journey in the corporate world of cannabis. Can you walk us through your story a little bit?
Sure, that's a great. A little bit. I could talk to you for 4 hours on that particular question, but I'll try and cut it short. Whatever it was, 10 years ago, my partner in Superior Safety Codes, is a regulatory company in Alberta, came into my office and he was talking to me about medical cannabis, and I thought he was bullshitting. I was actually trying to get my bets done with my bookie, and I had a tea time. And he said, no, I'm serious. I want to talk to you about this potential opportunity in the medical space in Canada. And Canada at that time was 4 patients per grow. Okay, we had a medical system, but you only were allowed 4 patients. They were commercializing that industry so that you could have an unlimited number of patients. I actually thought he was full of it. I thought he was joking, but he pushed me and he said, hey man, let's check this guy out. And it was his brother-in-law, Dale Lesack. So Steve Dobler has been my partner for over 30, 40 years. How many years now? 35 years. And Dale Lesack was his brother-in-law. And I journeyed down to Calgary, Alberta, north of Calgary, and went into this little barn grow who had been supplying cannabis for 4 patients. But they had a plan to go bigger, and they didn't have the infrastructure in place or the acumen in place, if you will, to really make a launch of it. And I was impressed. It looked like great weed. I know my cannabis, and away we went. So I put away the sticks, the golf clubs, and I stopped betting online and focused on let's go figure out what's going on in this cannabis space. I call it a pilgrimage. Maybe that's a little bit cocky, but it was. I went down the west coast of United States and British Columbia into the interior, BC, Kelowna. I remember being in an underground grow. That when I say underground, it was literally underground. It was like 3 sea cans that were underground. You had to walk down these steep stairs. I remember they opened the door and they boof with the lights. I took out my phone to take a picture, and some very large dude said, "No pictures." You know, he didn't say it like that. He F-bombed me as well. But so I thought at that time, well, maybe I'm going a little bit too deep into looking into the space. But the bottom line is, where I think it turned on a trigger with me is visiting dispensaries in Vancouver, in California, in Oregon, and seeing the people that were buying cannabis, and they're buying it for medical purposes. And most of those people were people my age or older. Older people. They're doing it for their ailments. And in Canada, we cover the cost of drugs, but not for cannabis. So what are they doing here? Right. Why would they be spending this money on weed? My experience with weed before then was to get high, to have some fun. And so then I started looking into the medical aspects of this, whether they had pain, sleep, anxiety, PTS, whatever it might be. And I really got a firm knowledge that, hey man, we got to do this. So that was about 3 months. I came back and said, Steve, we have to invest. And Dobler and I put a lot of our own money into getting Aurora going. And Aurora Cannabis, amazing company, still is, whatever, maybe they're having some struggles right now. I've not been there for, effectively 2 years, but we spoke to, 25 health ministers around the globe into having a medical cannabis system. Pretty proud of it. Yeah, it's cool. And then we had this lady who stood up in New York at the UN convention. Okay. And she told the world that Canada is legalizing cannabis federally. Okay. Sheeta. What was the last name? Potter? It's like something with pot, but anyway. Philpott. Sheeta Philpott. She stood up in New York and told the world on 4/20, on April 20th, that Canada is legalizing federally cannabis. So, wow. We didn't expect that when we entered the medical space. So then we started preparing at Aurora to get ready for adult usage. And, it's a good system up in Canada, but it's restricted. And our entry into America, not Aurora's, but my entry into America with Audacious and with Australis is more exciting. and I mean that. It's more exciting because of the population base, because of the ability to brand, and where Audacious was born, or Australis was born. Australis, by the way, is the southern hemisphere aurora. So if you're south of the equator, they call the aurora borealis. North of the equator, aurora. South, they call it Australis. That's where the name came from. So we thought, well, south of 59th parallel, USA,
Hey.
Australis.
Yeah.
So it's a tough name. And that's why we're rebranding this thing. But anyway, they were born. That company was born for our entry into America while we traded on the CSE. And when we graduated to the TSE and to the NYSE, it was no touch the plant, right? The rules, right? So we had to divest of our interest in Australis, and we spun it out. We spun it out into its own pubco, listed on the CSE, had a significant number of shareholders. It still does, and appointed a new board. We actually didn't even appoint a new board. We used an outside firm to get the board and to get the management team. The company didn't execute like we had thought they would. Not all their fault whatsoever. Regulatory requirements in the States, it's still the wild, wild west in America. There's 50 countries, if you will. Whatever. They didn't execute as we thought they would at Aurora. But then when my time was up at Aurora, I had an opportunity with Australis, and that came through a dissident battle. So the shareholders of Australis said, you know what, we don't like what you're up to. We want to remove the board and remove the management team. Okay, crazy stuff. In fact, these dissident battles, I've been involved in them before. You see all the crap press releases that go back and forth between each other, and it's really unfortunate, maybe a reflection of society. But the recommendation from these companies, these proxy firms, are to be mean to each other, if you will. I could use expletives, but I won't. It just was something that
you can. We're streaming. Go ahead.
No, yeah, sure.
Am I allowed to swear?
Yes, you are. Bruce does a lot. Believe me.
Bruce, that's right. Don't hold back, because you're following Bruce Linton, and he doesn't ever.
Okay, Bruce. I'm trying to control my potty mouth, but hell, and shit, you shit on each other in these proxy battles, and you're not even the ones writing the press release. It's just the proxy firms. So it seems really bitter in the public space of what you're saying about each other. We're saying shit about Scott. They're saying shit about me. You're in that battle, and we won. We kicked their asses. Right? It was 60 million shares to 20, and of the 20, 10 were Scott's. And Scott's still a very good friend of mine, and he's a great businessman. But it was time. They were trying to flip the company to a fintech. It's a cannabis company. We have a plan in place to move it forward. And part of the deal for getting Australis going again was to step in as CEO. Okay. And that was with respect to the acquisition of Alps, Aurora Larson Projects at the time. And Alps was the company that was responsible for building Aurora Sky, Aurora Denmark, Aurora Medicine Hat, looking after the 9 or 10 facilities in Canada. They know their shit for sure. They know their cannabis. They also know how to grow. Been in the greenhouse business for 30 years. Thomas Larson, he's one of the best in the world, in my opinion. Okay, so we move forward with Australis. We won the vote, the dissident vote. I joined the company as CEO in March 9th of this year, and we started to execute. And we've done a lot of deals, man, that are good deals, that they're accretive deals. It's not an Aurora 2.0. I get that question a lot. Are you going to do what you did at Aurora? No, I don't want 3,500 employees ever again. But I do want to build a brand in America. It's an amazing marketplace, America compared to Canada. You have to take your hat off to the US guys that have slugged it out with tough regulations. We call it 50 countries, 50 states with respect to cannabis. And I don't know, what have we done since I joined? And it's not me, it's this other C-suite we put together. Leah Bailey, John Paul, Duke Fu. All three of those C-suites are experienced cannabis executives. And then you tack on the management team that we've been able to attract, and don't think a lot of them weren't from Aurora. Okay, some great people that I would have never, ever, ever laid off at Aurora. Some of the people would have been my last 10 right? But we brought them on board and away we go. So here we are in March, and we think, okay, what are we going to do? We have some plans. We acquired ALPS, and ALPS is a unique model for entry into the MSO world. If you think about it, you know, some of the difficulty with being an MSO is just the licensing alone. So ALPS are building these facilities, and Thomas signs a contract, Thomas Larson, ALPS, and then I poke my big nose in. Say, hey man, would you assign us some of your canopy? Can we get 10% of your canopy? We'll pay you for the product, you know, cost plus 10, 5, just to stabilize the pricing of the product. And I didn't know that would work, Jimmy. I didn't know. But we tried it, and it's working. And it's working because, number one, the company that we're doing this work for and building their facility is happy to have, you know, a high level of, you know, knowledge on the grow. And they're also able to tell their bank they've already got 10% of their products sold.
Right.
Right. Because it's contractual. So, and then we'll white label back and forth with them. And the greatest example I could give, and I'm jumping way forward here, but I'll go to Belle Fleur, the deal we have in Massachusetts, because it's a good example of what we're up to, what our strategy is. These guys approached us because they thought, they thought we were a capital company where we invest in companies. That's really what Australis somewhat became, sort of a fintech. Giving people money, but not having that 51%, not having that top line revenue. And we said, no, we don't do that anymore. Okay, I'm at the helm now. And they said, and I said, but what, you know, what are you guys doing? Well, we're building a facility in Massachusetts. We have a social equity license of 110,000 square feet of canopy. We have a delivery license. We have a manufacturing license. We're all set to go in mass, but we're looking for cash. Well, I can't give you cash, but can we build you the facility? So enter Thomas and Joel. I get them on a call. It was about 2.5 hours long. And at first they were like, really? We know how to grow weed. You know, they managed about 1 million square feet of canopy in California before they entered Mass. They're from Mass, but they're going back to Massachusetts. And at the end of that call, 100% convinced that they needed the talent, the skill set that ALPS brings. Okay. I got a little bit of talent myself with respect to the product, the weed. I know in and out of cannabis, not as well as Thomas and Joel do. So these guys were cool. They said, yeah, we got to do this. So next thing you know, now we're building a facility in Massachusetts, and we have 10% of the canopy assigned, actually 12.5. We're going to do a deal on manufacturing with them. And I think it's been announced, hopefully. Otherwise, I just
or just did.
Thanks.
Breaking news. Hold up. Breaking news.
I'm in trouble now. My CFO is going to call me right after this interview. But it's just a possibility. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Anyhow, it just showed you that the industry, this kumbaya approach, the community, the culture, and our knowledge that we bring down from Canada. We're not smarter with respect to the grow. We've just been doing it longer. And don't think we didn't run into problems in Canada with the grow. These systemic diseases that you get when you bump up your square footage are prevalent, and anybody can talk about that. But the people know how to fix it. We do. Okay, the people at ALPS, not necessarily me, but the people at ALPS that are part of our deal. The other deal we did, and I know I'm blabbing on, but I want to sort of get it all in. Since I've been here, is GT. So Green Therapeutics is another company that we acquired that was pending when we walked into this dissident battle. So it was actually litigious. Okay, they didn't do this, we didn't do that. Everybody's suing each other. I don't like litigation. I'll do anything to avoid lawyer bills. Okay, but it was a great deal for Australis at the time, and it's an audacious deal because we bring Dr. Duke Fu. He's a scientist. His brands are amazing. He has 55% penetration in Nevada. So now we have some product. Boom, boom. We got ALPS. We can build your facilities. We're going to get more product. And boom, we're doing okay in Nevada on the sales side. Then what? We can't just stick in Nevada. So since March 9th, we've entered Oklahoma, Missouri, Massachusetts, California. Wow. I'm paying lobbyists in New York. Okay. And the lobbyist work really helped us in New Jersey. I don't know if you know the whole story in Jersey.
Yeah.
But initially they weren't going to have vertical integration. They weren't going to give it to the medical guys that are already there, which sucks. Unfair. It's not America. And we invoked some change. And now the regulations in New Jersey are going to allow for that vertical integration. So if you think about it, you got Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania. That's 80 million people, man.
I know.
That's
It's a few more than Canada, right? It's a few more than Canada.
And they're not restrictive on the brand side.
Right.
Like Canada, you go buy a package of joints or an ounce of weed, and Joe's packaging looks the same as Jimmy's and Fred's and Larry's, right? It's white and it's red. It has all these warnings on it. It's like scary, right? The booze companies in Canada are doing a better job of getting away with that, and hopefully Canada changes, but it's not that big of a population, and certainly all of us, including Bruce, and Vic and Irwin, we all overestimated this demand that we would see in the adult usage market. But I'm going to shut up right away here. I'll say this: the cannabis space is as small as it's ever going to be today.
Right. Ooh, I like that. Curt, I know you're chomping at the bit. David, I'm sure you've got a few questions as well about the history of what Terry brings to the market and to the United States. You want to go first, Curt?
Yeah. So to the best of my knowledge, Terry, you never self-dealt. What do you think of the way Aphria self-dealt?
BS, whatever you mean, before Irwin or after Irwin?
Before.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that got corrected, right?
Yeah.
I like Vic. I don't know the particulars of the deal, but what happened with Aphria is they ended up all getting accident. I mean, maybe they lined their pockets. That's not what I'm about. It's not what I've ever been about. And you can check my history. It's unfortunate. It's going to happen in any nascent industry, especially publicly traded. Then you add the cannabis factor to it. Like, come on. It was unfortunate. Even worse though, there were other companies that did things that were more offside. Okay. We can talk about it. It's in the public markets. Organogram. I call it Organoscam. I wouldn't know what they do. Right? They're an organic company and yet they were using pesticides. Aurora caught them doing that because we bought some of their weed and we sold it. We sold more weed than they did of their weed. And then it got tested and had pesticides. Are you kidding? Okay, that's fixed now. Don't get me wrong. They changed the top shelf as well. What was the company that did the secret curtains in Canada? Right, they're growing weed behind curtains. A lot of things went on, but I tell you what, the system that they put in place in Canada corrected those problems by virtue of finding them out.
Do you think, David's big on this, and I'll pass it to him. Does Canada have a future as an exporter based on cost? Because we've talked about low-cost providers, Mexico, South America. When this thing gets rolling, it's going to go to low electricity costs, low water costs, low labor costs. Where does Canada fit into that equation in, I don't know, let's say 3 years?
Sure. And I hope you're referring to the medical cannabis market.
Mm-hmm. Sorry.
Okay? Yeah. In the medical cannabis market, 100%, Canada has an amazing opportunity. So does America. It depends how you grow it. When we build these massive greenhouses, say 1 million square feet, our cost per gram is way below 50 cents. Okay. And it's high quality cannabis. And you really have to always go back to the amount of milligrams of THC and cannabidiol and other cannabinoids that you're producing relative to what the medical market needs. And consistency of grow is very, very important. So what you're talking about, Curt, is I think an equatorial play. Okay. We looked at equatorial plays, and yes, you can grow it cheaper outside in hoop houses on the equator. Yeah, you have your 12-12, but you still run the risk of weather, which you don't in a greenhouse. You're on a risk of disease, which you shouldn't have in an environmentally controlled greenhouse. And I almost want to jump to what ALPS is doing in the veggie space with the sustainable grow, because we're growing vegetables cheaper than you can grow in Mexico in sustainable grows. So, it is, it's all about technology. And I go back to what I was first saying about the Netherlands. You have this little tiny country that is responsible for 80 or maybe 70% of the vegetables in all of Europe, 600 million people. How'd they do that? They didn't do it outdoor, they're growing indoor. And they're growing in high-tech greenhouses, man, and they're growing at high yield and high quality. If you take, and think about this for a second, in Alaska, you grow some carrots, and I want to go back to cannabis, but you grow a carrot, and you grow it in Mexico, and you drive it to Alaska. By the time it gets to Alaska, you can whip a horse with it, like a bendy carrot, right? If you're growing those carrots in Alaska, the environmental footprint is nil. There's not a truck driving it from Mexico to Alaska, right? Diesel fuel, bunch of carrots, right? I'm not a big environmental dude. I believe in it, but the sustainable grow affects cannabis as well. Indoor grow is higher quality. We all know that. And at the end of the day, if it's a connoisseur of cannabis, good luck with your hoop house. You're not going to get your high quality bud on that. Are derivatives the answer grown in hoop houses? Yeah, for sure. If your hoop house growing, then use that for your extraction and your gummies and your pens. But people eventually will come around to the taste, and they have, right? If you look at the market, and a good example would be Cali and British Columbia. What's selling? Where do we make our money? And how do we excite, ignite, and delight our customers? How do we do that? By having high quality flower, which turns into high quality derivatives eventually. Certainly, the equatorial grow has an argument, but for export, man, come on, these countries are tough. Like Germany standards on grow, they're not taking hoop house grow. There's no way. You have to be GMP compliant. Good manufacturing practices. You have to be GACP compliant, good agricultural cultivation practices, and very difficult for you to do that on the equator. And don't think we didn't look at it, back in the day at Aurora and still are even at Audacious. But our focus right now is on this amazing American market that is about to pop.
David, I know you haven't had a chance. I want David to ask a question because he's a guy who loves to look at the finances. And one of the things we learned on this show, and you're talking about the equator, there's a country called Colombia that's down there that claims that they can grow 5 cents per gram cannabis in perfect outdoor conditions. What's the impact of that moving forward down the road on the rest of the market that's paying 50 cents up to $1 in North America?
Yeah, I don't know.
David, you can still ask a question. We're going to go long. Go ahead, Terry.
Do you want to grow cannabis in Colombia?
No. Well, I mean, do I? No. Do I? Have I used it? I'll admit.
In the back of the Chevy truck.
Yeah.
In Colombia growing cannabis. I mean, we had deals in Colombia, and I'm not going to get into it, but it's at 5 cents a gram. Good luck. Not GACP, not GMP compliant pot. That's we can grow 5 cent a gram pot in California, man. No problem.
Right.
And if we post, no
problem. And they do. Right.
But the indoor grow supports a market that is out there. And if you're going to build a brand, you don't want to just be hoop housing your weed, for sure. Right. I think you need a combination of both, Jimmy. I think that for your derivative market, let's look at the hoop house, maybe the equator. Do you think that Colombia is going to import pot into the United States ever?
Well, they certainly did in the 70s and 80s. I can tell you that.
Yeah, well, yeah.
It's called brickweed.
There's a little thing called duty.
Yeah, I know.
Taxes and the countries that protect themselves, like Canada and America, they have a little thing called duties. If you're importing shit into our country, we're going to hit you with a duty, and that'll ramp up your cost basis for sure.
David, I know you've got a question, and I know what you're chomping at the bit to ask. So go ahead.
What's my okay? What
about interstate commerce? Come on, this is teed up for you. Go ahead.
So we become enthralled with a paper that was published back in July by a Vanderbilt law professor who maintains that interstate commerce in the U.S. right now can't be stopped by the states, and he's got some very compelling arguments. Obviously, that doesn't go to international. But at the point where you said you got facilities in lots of states, how many of those states do you have cultivation facilities?
We have cultivation. Well, cultivation plant are operating. Operating is Nevada and Cali.
Okay. And what kind of facilities do you have in Massachusetts?
I love this question because it's a great lead-in for me. It's almost like you guys planned it. right, for me, because it's great. I have a great answer for you. In Massachusetts, the facility is under construction now. They won a license. It's social equity license from Bellfleur, 110,000 square feet canopy. That includes 4 retail. It includes delivery, which is only allowed for in social equity, and it includes manufacturing. So all 4 verticals. Massachusetts is a great state for regs, and that's my background is regulations. And I don't think we haven't done our work in figuring out which states we should be in. So that facility is under construction. It's already a few million bucks into it. It's a $35 million project, beautiful facility, and that social equity license were granted the largest license that you can get in Massachusetts, David. But to answer your question with this cross-state stuff and commerce, if you're going to build a brand, you should be able to transfer your cultivars in a consistent manner, and that's not allowed right now. I can't take my mums from Cali and throw them in Nevada, right? Not allowed. But we have this little deal, and that's why I love the question, with a group out of Colorado called 3 Rivers, and they do something called plant tissue culture and micropropagation. And my time at Aurora, we spend millions of dollars on PTC and micropropagation of plant tissue culture, and we didn't quite get it. Maybe they have now. I've not been there for 2 years, but these cats in Colorado have nailed it on micropropagation. So not only did they clean up the genetics, but it's legal to transport cannabis in agar solution, right? It's like a petri dish.
Yep.
Away we go. Right? And away we go with our mums. So we're going to bring our cultivars and our cannabis into these states legally, totally legal, and have the consistency of strain. So I don't think you're talking about that with cross-state commerce. And if this individual, I'd love you to send me that, what this guy's working on with actually having the ability to cross state lines with the product, because that's where it's going, right? There's 35 states where you can sit on your step and smoke a joint, correct? Right. No problem.
36, I think.
36, perfect. And there'll be 39 the next time we speak, maybe.
Right.
And you've got Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court saying this is silly.
Right.
What are we doing, right? And he's conservative. So the opportunity is immense. Are they going to legalize in America sooner rather than later? No. But I think we're past where we were at the Cole memo stage. Remember the Cole memo?
Oh, God. You want David to recite it? He's asking James Cole to come on the show in a couple of weeks. We're doing this interstate commerce show.
Cool. That's cool. I'll watch that for sure.
You'll want to, Terry, you'll want to watch the show in 2 weeks. See, we have an unbelievable roster of guests.
Yep.
We're taking a deep dive into this interstate thing. But from your perspective, if in fact you can transport marijuana interstate in the U.S., what does that do to your indoor grow facilities if everybody from the East Coast gets onto JetBlue, flies out to the Emerald Triangle, and they're buying weed out there and shipping it back east?
Mm-hmm. The Emerald Triangle is to come on Northern Cali because there's 2 Emerald Triangles. Yes. Cool. We'll have weed there ready for them to sell. You know, we're gonna grow cannabis wherever we can. The crazy thing about the East Coast is they don't have a bunch of gray grow. They never have, right? They've always brought the weed in from Cali and Oregon and British Columbia. Right. So is that going to continue? No, they're going to build big facilities on the East Coast that grow inexpensive, high quality cannabis. And that'll be a state requirement as to where you get your weed from. Of course, you might be able to import it, but they're going to duty it. Right.
They've got a lot of problems on that. Under the U.S. Constitution and the Commerce Clause, the states can't just there was a presentation at Benzinga, I believe this morning, where the speaker said, well, I think the states will just restrict interstate commerce. They don't, according to Mikos's paper, the states don't have that power or authority. The Commerce Clause of the U.S. Constitution will usurp that.
Yeah, and you're talking about stuff. It actually goes back as far as the British North American Act, right? My house, my kingdom, for states. And you remember California was like he threatened to leave the Union of the United States, but they didn't get their way around cannabis. So I get the passion, I get the thought, and I get the idea. But how far are we away? I don't want to even focus on that right now, man. There's just so many opportunities in the states themselves where you need to build your brand. Certainly, 100%. If we're able to bring in our cannabis from Cali or from other states, then you're going to see some mass production, right? And that mass production will be done in states or hoop houses or the equator to bring in cannabis. You have to be nimble and be ready for that. But as it sits right now, my opinion on America with respect to legislation with the MORE Act and the SAFE Act and this taxation thing, again, take my hat off to people who are still making money here in America. But I think those things happen first. Do you think, is it your opinion, Dave, that it's going to be legalized before those types of acts pass? Like you can't take a credit card?
Here's my opinion. Having read Mikos's paper over several weeks and gone back and forth, I think he could be onto something. And I think that, and I'm going to won't let the cat totally out of the bag, but if he's correct, I think people could be transporting weed across state lines really, really soon.
And
it may only be for the medical markets, right? Because the way our regulatory structure is at the federal level, if you've got somebody who is a licensed grower in California and they're testing it at a level that Massachusetts requires, and somebody is a licensed medical marijuana operator in Massachusetts, and they import it they put it on a plane in California and bring it over here. When that plane lands, the DEA and the FBI can all be standing around, but they can't do anything because it's medical marijuana. And as long as it's in compliance with state regulations, under Rohrabacher, they can't expend any resources to go after those kinds of activities. And I think all it takes is somebody to sue in a local state that the state can't restrict my ability to import it as long as it meets the testing requirements.
I love everything you said, and I believe in everything you said. It's a matter of time before that occurs. And I think you're seeing many things happen federally. I didn't get to quite answer the full question on legalization in the States. I do think medical will be allowed in the States. I think that they'll leave it at the state level, medical cannabis, but to take it off the CDSA, there's a process there. And that requires an application to the UN, just like Canada did. And you have to give them 12 months notice. Yep. And you have to address three things. You have to address cannabis getting into the hands of the youth, cannabis being safe, right? And cannabis being grown by audited federally facilities. And so that's a ways away no matter what. There's no winds of change in that regard. But to move cannabis across state lines, I agree with you. That'd be cool. I don't know what it would take. You need to be on that, but it's not like California can grow weed at a lower cost than Massachusetts. They can't, right? You know how much the taxation system is in California for the water and one on cannabis? Like California is one of the toughest states to navigate towards profitability. And maybe you were just using that for an example. Maybe New Mexico might be a better example, or some of the other southern states, because of the summer is what you're saying. You know, they have longer summers. You're only turning 2 crops in Cali anyway. And I'd love to show you the numbers that we were able to put together with respect to indoor grow. You know, old school was, when you talk about greenhouses, back in the day, we considered a greenhouse an outdoor grow, okay? It wasn't until I went to Netherlands, I said, this is not an outdoor grow. This is an indoor grow. The number of lights in a greenhouse that's built by Alps is equivalent to the number of lights that you have on an indoor grow. When you do the math on the yield that you're able to do with LED and high pressure sodium and halide and environmental controls and nutrient delivery systems, and this is like high-end stuff, guys. It's like, you know, automation that you can't do in the hoop house. Your price per gram comes down. And I'd love you guys to have a chat with one of our guys, Joel Fuzat, with respect to this. He's from the Emerald Triangle, okay? He made his way up the West Coast, Oregon, and I met him on an airplane, believe it or not. And I was reading the Herbal Pharmacopoeia that's written by a group in California about cannabis. And he was like 2 seats over, and I tell the story off, and he says, hey, dude, why are you reading about cannabis? And we got in this conversation, and it was only a 1-hour flight, Edmonton to Vancouver. I was chasing this young American around the airport in Vancouver with my tie all crooked from being in raise money interviews to give him my card. I had to hire him. I had to hire this dude because he knew what we're talking about on the grow. And Aurora was in its very early days, and we hadn't designed our facility. And he took the job. And Joel is still Now he's he's a senior guy with Alps, and he knows his cannabis inside out, and he can talk to you in like off the cuff on the cost per gram stuff. And I'd love for you guys to talk to him.
Well, David loves his numbers. He never gets enough numbers to look at. So getting those together, but I'm not going to record that. Okay. Let them just talk about their numbers by themselves in a small room somewhere. Okay.
I think David, because of your knowledge and your passion about what you're looking into here, with respect to state and who's got the least cost per gram, you need to talk to a dude like Joel. He'll talk to you about this what we have going on at Alps.
Well, we're going to wrap up in a few minutes. So when we do, we'll keep you after, and I'm going to get that contact information. Curt, you have any last questions for Terry?
No, I mean, I know we're a little over, and I know I'll probably see you in Vegas and Bruce as well. So I appreciate all your time. It's just fascinating when you get a guest on that can, give a lot of knowledge, whether it's history and what you're doing now. It was awesome. Thank you for everything and coming on for that long.
Yeah. No, man. Thanks for having me. I love what we're doing. I love the business of cannabis, and I love business. And I'm really looking forward to being able to do this like we're doing already in America. The opportunity is immense. This stock is undervalued, and I intend to excite, ignite, and delight our shareholders and our customers.
Great.
There you go. Well, you've done that on this show to our audience, and we appreciate that. So for Terry Booth, David Rabinovitz, Curt Dalton, Dan French, who directs this, Isabel Turner, who's our production coordinator, I thank you all. We did go a little bit long today, but Terry, it's because your story's so compelling, and we look forward to seeing you in Vegas at MJBiz Con. So for everybody here at Pro Cannabis Media, I'm Jimmy Young. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. We'll see you next week in Vegas.
Anytime. Peace and love. Thank you very much.
Coming up on We Talk News tonight, a snag in the House committee looking to advance cannabis research at the VA for veterans. Snoop Dogg puts his money where his passion is by helping out a European cannabis startup. The NBA will once again pass on random drug testing for weed this season, a continuation of a policy from last year's bubble season. And California opens its doors to the international CBD market. Why? The Golden State wants to take advantage of a $3.2 trillion industry. Of course they do. On We Talk News next. Pro Cannabis Media Programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first. And by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And by Artery Pay, easy, cheap, fun, and legal, just like cannabis should be. Hi everyone, I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media, and this is We Talk News. So, are you going to the biggest cannabis convention in the world next week in Las Vegas? Yes, it's the 10th annual MJBiz Con, and we'll be there reporting all week. Our weekly Green Rush Live show on the business of cannabis, well, that will be originating from the Strip next Friday live. Meanwhile, Nick Richards is an attorney for Green Spoon Martyr, one of the nation's law firms with a cannabis practice that's based in Colorado. Nick will be taking part on a panel at MJBiz Con talking about the IRS and cannabis companies. Now, most people in the cannabis industry know all about Section 280E that doesn't allow companies to take normal business expenses when doing their taxes. But Nick knows about another clause that he thinks the industry should go after.
This cannabis is weird in every single way, and tax is not different. And so even though those code sections might say one thing, they could be completely wrong in their way they are now affecting cannabis companies. So now let's talk about Section 471C, Jimmy, I'm so glad we're talking today because this is really, really, really important stuff. This should be the single most important thing for anyone in the cannabis industry and anyone who's an advocate for the cannabis industry or, in fact, for social justice in the cannabis industry. Because guess what? Section 280E is a creature of the war on drugs. It is and we all know that the war on drugs was a war on minorities. And Section 280E is the number one tool that our federal government has in that war. As a matter of fact, it was created during the war on drugs. And then when California first legalized marijuana, it was identified as the best tool for the federal government, Clinton administration at the time, to fight legalization, right? And it is still the tool that the federal government is using to fight legalization. Let's not forget that.
That panel on the IRS and cannabis will be on Thursday in Las Vegas at MJBiz Con. We'll have a full preview of that big show from here in our home state of Massachusetts, but we'll be looking to preview MJBiz Con in Las Vegas on Friday when the CEO of MJBiz Daily, Chris Walsh, joins us live at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on Green Rush Live. We also have the CEO of Audacious Brands, Terry Booth, who was the founder of Aurora, joining us at 5:30. So don't miss that live or on demand on our PCM TV network. So just when you thought there would be progress on VA hospitals becoming more accessible for veterans seeking cannabis, well, a recent House committee hearing ended with some controversy. Here's Phil Adams with the DC report. Phil?
Administration would embrace even modest cannabis reforms were at least partially dashed this week. At a hearing before the House Veterans Affairs Health Subcommittee, David Carroll, an official at the Department of Veterans Affairs, told lawmakers his department continues to oppose the VA Cannabis Research Act. The measure would require the VA to conduct clinical trials into the therapeutic potential of cannabis for military veterans. In his testimony before the subcommittee, Carroll said the legislation is, quote, not consistent with VA's practice of ensuring scientific merit as the basis for a randomized clinical trial. The bill got the thumbs down from the administration despite support from multiple veteran service organizations, including Veterans of Foreign Wars, Disabled American Veterans, and the American Legion. Long waits and high prices seem to be the order of the day for medical marijuana patients in Virginia. Though it is now legal in the Commonwealth to possess and grow cannabis for personal use, Virginia's medical marijuana program is still the only legal avenue for purchasing cannabis. Patients who want to shop at a Virginia dispensary must first get a doctor's recommendation, then apply to the Virginia Board of Pharmacy for a medical marijuana card, a process that many complain can take months. After a full year of legal medical marijuana sales in Virginia, fewer than 33,000 patient cards have been issued. Advocates, including Jen Pedini, executive director of Virginia NORML, believe the small number of patients, combined with the decision to grant operating licenses to only 5 regional suppliers, have contributed to higher cannabis prices, which can often be twice that of comparable products sold in Maryland and D.C. Maryland lawmakers meeting to craft a legalization measure in their state are getting advice from a top federal drug official. Susan Weiss of the National Institute on Drug Abuse appeared at a meeting of the Maryland House Legalization Work Group to discuss recent trends and offer words of caution. Among her recommendations, Weiss advised keeping medical and recreational sales separate while paying close attention to which products people are using and how they use them. Weiss also recommended that lawmakers lean on the advice of health professionals rather than on industry stakeholders in developing a regulated cannabis market in Maryland. That's the Weed Talk News DC report for this week. I'm Phil Adams from Vote Pro Podcast.
Now, I think we all know that California remains the biggest state in the union for the cannabis market, for both legal and, of course, the illegal market. Well, now it looks like that state will be exporting CBD all over the world. Governor Gavin Newsom signed that into law this week. And Christopher Smith from the American Cannabis Report has that story and more in his California report for Weed Talk News this week. Chris?
I'm Christopher Smith, publisher of the American Cannabis Report, bringing you the roundup from the great cannabis state of California for Weed Talk News. From the Benefits of Cannabis Desk and the Santa Cruz Lookout, voters in Santa Cruz will decide next month the fate of Measure A, which would nearly double the amount of money flowing from the Santa Cruz cannabis business tax to childhood development programs in the town. The increase comes amid an extended period of hardship for families brought on by the pandemic. And from our Hollywood desk and Entertainment Weekly, 30 years ago, while filming their movie Twins, Danny DeVito would often make a big Italian lunch for his co-star Arnold Schwarzenegger, and afterward they'd have cigars and relax before the afternoon's filming. One day, DeVito added some cannabis to his movie brother's big cigar, and the Terminator got blasted. Hilarity ensued, and with it, the need for some Austrian revenge. Fast forward to filming the sequel, Triplets, and Arnold tried to return the favor with a well-packed Cuban look-alike. But unfortunately, DeVito still has the nose of a bloodhound, Schwarzenegger reports, and he sniffed out the special ingredient right away. Better luck next time, big guy. And finally, from the file called Men's Rights or Men's Wrongs and the San Luis Obispo Tribune, men's rights activist sues another San Luis Obispo County business over ladies' night promotion. Some guys are destined never to get laid. Take Steve Fry, a former member of the National Coalition for Men. He's filed a class action lawsuit against Megan's Organic Market at San Luis Obispo Dispensary over its ladies' night promotion, which advertises, on average, women make 84 cents for every dollar their male counterparts make. So every Monday from 6 p.m. to close, we're offering women 16% off their purchase. To be fair to men, Megan's added, if you're a man and you reap the benefits of pay inequality and also want to redeem this discount, be our guest. Mr. Fry is seeking statutory damages of $4,000 for each and every offense and an order requiring that management and employees undergo diversity and inclusiveness training. Now, I'm no judge, but someone might want to look at Megan's website and realize it's open from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day or 77 hours a week. Ladies' night is only 2 hours on Monday, so there's 75 hours of operation each week where Steve could go to Megan's and be treated like a woman, since that seems to be what he wants. It also been reported that in the state of California, Steve Fry has filed 40 gender discrimination lawsuits. And I'm Christopher Smith from the American Cannabis Report, beaming in from Cannabis Heaven, California, for Weed Talk News.
Last year, the NBA, the National Basketball Association, managed to run a postseason tournament in a bubble at Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida. Now, during that time, the league postponed their random drug testing for cannabis for its players. Well, now those players won't have to worry about that again, since the league announced this week that policy will be continued for this entire season. That's certainly good news for many players, although the league does have some problems with non-vaccinated players against COVID, like Kyrie Irving, who will not be able to play for the Nets in Brooklyn this year unless he gets his shot. Funny, since Kyrie is a master at creating his own shot, just not getting them. Anyway, I'm certainly glad he doesn't play for the Celtics anymore. Now, let's go to Vermont to hear from Jessie Lynn Dolan, who's been busy harvesting her crop for the year. Here's the Vermont Report with Jessie Lynn.
Thanks, Jimmy. I'm Jessie Lynn Dolan from Nurse Grown Organics and Vermont Cannabis Nurses, and this is the Weed Talk News Vermont Report. Hot and Heady has just launched their dinner and a movie event series with old school classics being played on an outside large screen with infused snacks for your enjoyment. First showing is on October 23rd, starting it off right with an all-time favorite, Ghostbusters. Check out Hot and Heady on Instagram for more information. On October 22nd, the University of Vermont Extension Northwest Crops and Soil Program is holding their annual Fall Field Day at Borderview Farm in Alburg. Come tour the fields and learn about the latest research in grains, cover crops, soil health, and forages. Field Day is free, but you need to register by October 20th at 2021fallfieldday.eventbrite.com. The Marijuana for Symptom Relief Oversight Committee voted on their recommendations for the board makeup moving forward and have submitted them to the Cannabis Control Board. These recommendations will serve as a strong base for the medicinal cannabis program, patient support, and representation moving forward. That's the Vermont Report for Weed Talk News. I'm Vermont's cannabis nurse, Jessie Lynn Dolan.
Nevada will play host to next week's 10th annual MJBiz Con trade show and the conference, of course, that goes along with it. But the news from Nevada this week comes from the $1 billion in taxable sales of cannabis over the past 12 months in that state. $159 million will now be used for the distributive school account, thanks to the sales of cannabis over the past year. That's an increase of 46% over the previous fiscal year. Hope that news item just reaches some of those states out there that continue to be on the fence about legalizing cannabis in your state. Do you hear that, South Dakota? Come on, get on top of things, will you?
Hey, thanks, Jimmy. This is Brandon Jones with Distribution Maven with your Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. My first story today comes off of the story I did last week versus Tygo versus DHSS. The federal court judge announced today, after only 7 minutes sitting on trial, that no longer does Missouri have to have a residency requirement to open and operate a license for medical marijuana in the state of Missouri. This is a big change. We've seen that, this is going around the states where things have kind of relaxed and left either after a time period or no residency requirement. So this is kind of a trendsetter that other states, I think, are going to use in the future to resonate and say that this is passed in Missouri, and so I don't think this requirement is going to be required throughout the rest of the United States. My second story comes out of Mo Greenway. The DHSS releases manufactured marijuana products from hold. So the Missouri Department of Health Senior Services Marijuana Regulation Requirement announced at the end of administrative hold for Metric for bulk products involved in the email that was sent out last afternoon. The email explained that manufactured marijuana products and product already in the manufacturing process will be removed from administrative hold within 24 hours, with one exception. Flower and flower products, including pre-rolls that were placed on hold previously, will remain on hold in Metric as the investigation continues. So if you know anything about my history, you think humidity is definitely something that should have an issue here. It might have some mold with some products. So they're trying to get down to it to make sure that all of the residents here in Missouri aren't getting anything that's got tainted products. So thanks again. This is Brandon Jones with Distribution Maven for Weed Talk News with your Cannabis Report from Missouri. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great weekend.
The state of Florida has a pretty vibrant medical cannabis market with over 600,000 patients enrolled, but unfortunately, that state has not distributed their medical dispensary licenses according to the laws that were put in place to help social equity applicants. Did you know there are 22 treatment centers in that state and only one is minority owned? Farmers there have also been shut out because of their ethnicity. There have been dozens of lawsuits, and the regulatory board there is in no hurry to do anything about that. Even in Oklahoma, where everybody gets a medical license, there are issues about equality and fairness. Dion Osborne covers that beat for the Black Wall Street Times, and this is his report on what's going on in Oklahoma. Dion?
My name is Dion Osborne from the Black Wall Street Times, here with the Oklahoma report for Weed Talk News. Now, here in the state of Oklahoma, there's been 2 petitions filed recently, one to alter the state's current medical program and one to legalize recreational marijuana for those 21 and up. In the case of State Question 817, Oklahoma Marijuana Regulation and Right to Use Act, it would legalize it for those 21 and up, place a 15% tax on purchases, allow for up to 8 ounces of purchases, and 12 homegrown plants. It would seek for the expungement of records of cannabis-related convictions and ban discrimination on the basis of, housing, employment, public services, just because someone has THC in their system or on their hair, on their body. Now, State Question 818, Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Enforcement and Anti-Corruption Act, would really take authority out from the current program, the OMMA, and give it its own freestanding agency, the Oklahoma State Cannabis Commission. Now, the reason for this is because really there's been a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of late to the game regulations that have that have really caught business owners off guard. There's been a lot of lawsuits against the industry, against the program. And so the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority currently is underneath the Oklahoma Healthcare Authority. And so that has caused a lot of these problems, a lot of these delays in setting standards across the industry. And so petitioners are hoping, that this change would really benefit and solve a lot of the problems happening in the industry right now. And so in both cases, they'll need at least 178,000 signatures in order for their petitions to pass. So we'll see what happens.
I'm Elena Pinto for Weed Talk News. Massachusetts U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren teamed up with New Jersey Senator Cory Booker this week by writing a letter to Attorney General Merrick Garland to deschedule cannabis. According to the Controlled Substances Act, the AG has the power to do just that. This is another tactic by cannabis advocates in order to get cannabis reform at the federal level. That letter reminded Garland that during his presidential campaign, Joe Biden said that nobody should be in jail from smoking marijuana. Both Booker and Warren have asked Garland to respond to their review of cannabis's classification by October 20th. For the rest of the Massachusetts cannabis news, here's Ron Marshalsea.
I'm Ron Marshalsea with the Massachusetts Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. The town of Lee, Massachusetts decided not to charge an impact fee to a cannabis store, which has been cited by Haverhill cannabis retailer STEM, showing there are no impacts from hosting such businesses. Owner and CEO of STEM, Caroline Pinot, said the recent experience by the town of Lee and earlier by the city of Northampton, which did the same thing, shows recreational cannabis stores have thus far posed no additional or unusual expenses to communities that host them. Pinot is calling on the Haverhill City Council to review the administration's calculation of $1.3 million in extra costs associated with all cannabis shops in Haverhill. Pinot was quoted as saying, "The $1.3 million cost report produced by Haverhill looked ridiculous when it came out, and it looks even more ridiculous now with the town of Lee and Northampton both admitting there have been no costs. I think the City Council should question every aspect of this report and demand that the mayor produce actual evidence of real costs." STEM filed suit against Haverhill in April, and in September, an independent consulting firm found that more than $866,000 of extra expenses were allocated to the Haverhill Police Department and $288,000 to Haverhill Public Schools. City officials plan to meet again this fall with its 3 operating cannabis retailers to review cost analyses. Stephen Van Zandt, a founding member of Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band, is launching a line of cannabis pre-rolls at Canna Provisions in Massachusetts. Little Stephen's Underground Apothecary pre-rolls will be exclusively available at Canna Provisions, and they are made with Western Massachusetts-grown Smash Hits cannabis. Van Zandt said in a statement, "We need to help spread cannabis education, destigmatization, and stop unjust criminalization for a plant that not only does a lot of good, but has proven during COVID to be essential to people's well-being and quality of life." His pre-rolls contain high CBD, low THC craft cannabis, which Canna Provisions said will give less of a stoned high and more of a full-body balancing effect with uplifting pep. That's this week's Massachusetts Cannabis Report. For Weed Talk News, I'm Ron Marshalsea.
Everyone knows Snoop Dogg is a huge cannabis supporter, but he's now putting his money where his passion is. Snoop Dogg is investing in a Portuguese medical cannabis company to the tune of $18.7 million. The company, AceCan, is the first licensee in that country. One more note of international news. Canopy Growth from Canada is acquiring Wana Brands, the #1 edible brand in North America. And lastly, it's harvest season. So home growers and commercial growers, you're bringing in your crops for the season, right? So here's a few suggestions of what to do with any extra weed. Well, you could gift it. Maybe you can make some canna butter, or just roll a big fatty, have a party, smoke a joint. I'm Elena Pinto for this week's Weed Talk News. And remember what PCM founder Jimmy Young always says, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly.
PCM TV is supported by Salient Systems, a world leader in video management security, and by Revolutionary Clinics, a medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. Weed Talk and In the Weeds are 2 productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
difference is building a solution for that individual. Not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the cost low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
Pro Cannabis Media programming is available live and on demand on our Facebook page at Pro Canna Media, on Instagram at Pro Cannabis Media, on LinkedIn also at Pro Cannabis Media, on YouTube and YouTube Live on Pro Cannabis Media, Twitter at Pro Canna Media, and on twitch.tv/Pro Cannabis Media. So like, share, and subscribe to all of our content, newsletters, and shows live or on demand.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.